Ir dabar, niekas gyvenime linko šito nesuves, nes tingės galų gale, aš irgi tingiu ir nevesiu. Bet tai yra story opinion. Crowderis daro tą patį, ką darė prieš tą Jusifą. Kur yra steitų, kur 9 mėnesiai tu neši ir vis tiek gali pasidaryti abortą. Čia skamba fucking ridiculous, ne? Ir Crowderis tą daro jau N metų. Ta pastebi bet kas realiai, kas, objektyviai žiūri ir stebi, kai jis... Gerai, šitam aš biškai iš ateities čia po streamo editinant video šitą, aš pažiūrėjau, kai žiūrėsim Crowderio video, bus epizodas, kur aš kalbėsiu apie nuorodą, kuris palinkinęs, ant ekranų, bet nėra linko, jam padėjęs, tai aš sakau, nieks nežiūrės, tai aš nepatinkiau, nurašiau tą linką. Ir čia yra tas linkas, kuris kalbės apie Crowderio teigimu, kad įsteigė tos Planned Parenthood lokacijas, tai juoduose rajonuose, kad juodaodžius vaikus žudyti. Iš esmės taip, ir jis palinkino būtent į šitą. Visų pirma, aš klausiau, čia šaltinis, USA Today šaltinis yra reasonable, neišališkas ypatingai labai, faktiškai irgi normaliai, tipo geras šaltinis, kas gerai. O šitas opinion piece'as, tai taip, parašytas iš Christian Republikonės, kaip suprantu, moters, aš nežinau, kaip jie dar apibūdinti, liktais neseimūnė, nieko, tiesiog kažkokie moteris, gal autorių, nežinau, gal šiaip žurnalistė, neįsivaizduoju, bet aktyvistė gal tiesiog. Bet jo, jinai čia labai kažkur giliai nėrė. Jinai nėrė į 1939 metus, tenais į įkūrėjus Planned Parenthood, apie eugenics, kaip čia, motyvą, projektą, kuris buvo kontroversiškas projektas, patys matot, koks projektas. Žodžiu, iš esmės mintis ta, kad jinai teigia, čia jos opinion piece'as, by the way, jinai teigia, kad tas Planned Parenthood buvo įsteigtas baltųjų supremistų, ten rasistų, įkurtas jo lokacijos atidarytos tik tose vietose, kur rasistai gyvena. Čia toks unhinged biškai, aš paskaičiau tas straipsnis, kur, net neįsivaizduoju, čia kaip galima, tokį, kaip ir remtis. Paskui aš dar pažiūrėjęs buvau, kiek juodų žmonių, kiek baltų žmonių daugmaž daros abortus, ten dar Hispanics'e įvedė, labai priklauso nuo stato, bet tuose statuose, kur kancelinus Roe versus Wade, tam tikri statai iš karto padarytų abortą nelegalų, praktiškai iš karto įsigaliotų. Tai tuose statuose maždaug 50-50 pasidalinę. Kai kuriuose statuose daugiau juodaodžių, kurie abortus darosi, kai kuriuose daugiau baltaodžių. Tai tipo, nematyčiau jokio to tipo prejudice prieš kažkokią bent jau. Dar tą pasakius, žiūrint video keletą kartų paminėjau, kad nežinau kiek statų, ten 15, lyg tai sakiau, statų, kad įsigalios, kai duosi statam teisę nuspręs patiems, tai 15 ten ar kiek automatiškai įsigalios iš karto, kad nelegalu. Tai aš pažiūrėjau 26. Tai daugiau negu pusė realiai statų iš karto įsigalioja nelegalus abortas arba labai griežtai suvaržomas bus. Tai čia patikslinimas toks. Ir dar pasitikslinau, didžioji dauguma žmonių Amerikoje nori, kad abortai būtų legalūs. Tai jo, ten, tipo... šičia, man atrodo, kuriais čia metais buvo nežinau, kuriais metais čia buvo čia buvo 22 May 3. Čia labai nesenas buvo ir čia klausimai buvo. Should the US Supreme Court uphold the Overturn Roe versus Wade? Tai labai mažai žmonių, 4/4 nori, kad overturnintų iš viso tą. Tada abortion should be legal all or most cases, tai dauguma nori, kad ir legalus būtų, ir tada kam palikti teisę? Įstatymui ar moteriai ir jos daktarui? Tai ir dauguma ir tą nori. Tai čia net nėra klausimai, viena pusė čia subalsavo. Gerai, tą pasakius, čia toks adendumas, dabar galim eiti į praeitį ir žiūrėti video, koks jis buvo įrašytas.
Well, it's the person that had...
Jo, gerai bus garsas, gal tą galiu iš tikro dar biškai pati. Čia yra minimumas. Crowderio video čia yra Do people really know what Roe vs. Wade is? Aišku, nieks nežino. Aš nežinau, ten, tik teisininkai ir tai, ką žino, jie ten labai gerai žinos. Aš vakar biškai pradėjau klausytis, Destiny suvedė 3 advokatus, net advokatus, nežinau, gal ir advokatus, galima tai pavadinti. Tie, kur law ten baigė praktisinę, žodžiu. Ir jie šnekėjo apie tai. Tai ten, pradžia jau buvo gan įdomi. Nes iš teisinės, tai yra daug niuansų. Vienas sako, kad tai yra kompromisas tarp pro-life ir pro-choice. Kitas sako, kad iš viso legalia kalba tai yra visiškai blogai parašytas dalykas. Ir daug klausimų kyla, ar net jeigu jis blogai parašytas dalykas, ar, sako, kad jis vis tiek neturėtų būti atšauktas, nes tipo dabar kyla kiti klausimai, jeigu šitą atšauks, tada sekantis bus kontracepcija, man atrodo. Ir kontracepcija gali būti, ir same-sex marriage, tipo, nes iš to sprendimo, labai daug kitų teisinių dalykų priklauso. Tai čia Stevenas Crowderis, eis ir random žmonių klaus, kas yra Roe vs. Wade, aišku, nieks nežinos. Tipo, žinoma, nieks nežinos. Bet lygiai tą patį Crowderį tu pastatysi prieš advokatą pašnekėti ir, Crowderis visiškai nieko nežinos iš tos pusės ten irgi. Tai čia tiesiog, bet įdomu turbūt bus pažiūrėti, kaip atrodo žmonėms, kaip jie vertina ir, Crowderis kažką bus paskaitęs tikrai apie tai, prieš einant, kad galėtų ant nieko nežinančių žmonių užstumti. Okay.
The child inside their body is... Where am I going with this?
So after news broke from the leak that the Supreme Court will allegedly overturn Roe v. Wade, of course the media jumped on it, and this happened.
If the court overturns Roe v. Wade, it will be a direct assault on freedom.
69% of Americans say they do not want the court to overturn Roe v. Wade.
If this is issued over 20 states, there's a trigger.
Whoa,
where
what the
abortion will automatically be banned.
I cannot tell you the outrage I feel at this decision.
The Republicans have been working toward
Kas čia per monstras?
for decades.
Women will die.
Abortion, safe and legal!
Kodėl, kai aš pradėjau video žiūrėti, pirmą kartą gyvenime pamačiau kažkokį monstrą. What the fuck is that shit? Ar jūs matot, kas vyksta, blet? Is it dead? I think it died. Can it die? Okay, it can die. What the fuck? Okay. Normalu, gerai, žiūriu toliau.
What are the next things that are going to be attacked?
By the way, frazė it's a direct attack on freedom, yra cringy as fuck, nes viskas yra attack on freedom. Tu gali viską taip interpretuoti. Negali naktį triukšmauti, it's an attack on my freedom. Mes apie tą temą jau kalbėjom su COVID-u, tipo, laisvė, mano laisvė, mano laisvė. Čia stupid as shit, tai kad ten demokratija, man atrodo, kažkurį ten tą politiką jų pasakė, ten, tipo, jau iškart žinai, kad dieve mano.
Okay, that seems bad. But that could be because most Americans don't actually know what the overturning of Roe v. Wade really means. So contrary to gotcha journalism with Man in the Street, we decided to just go and talk with people and find out. Actually, if you guys do have a couple minutes, we're just asking, have you been any of you been following the Roe v. Wade overturning?
What is it?
The federal, Supreme Court, the abortion law?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So,
I heard about that.
yeah, do you mind if I ask you? We're just kind of getting a feel for everybody where they line up on this. What do you think about it? It's
Horse?
so Roe v. Wade, yeah, it's the Supreme Court. There was a leak.
Tipo,
We're assuming.
Priėjo prie žmonių, paklausė, kurie net pavadinimą pasakė ir nežinojo, kas tai yra. Tada pasakė, čia tas abortion bill. Jo, kažką girdėjau. Ir dabar tu šitų žmonių klausė ir žino, kas tas yra. Tai aišku nežino. What the fuck? Tas užpės labai, kai klausinė, čia kaip klausimėlis laida tiesiog. Eini prie žmonių, kurie aišku nesidomi ir nežino.
It's true. It seems like it's true. They're going to be overturning Roe v. Wade.
Which is like they're going to be letting people abort their child?
net paklausė, kas tas
This
yra.
isn't because a lot of people didn't really understand this. A lot of people think that overturning Roe v. Wade means there'll be a federal ban on abortion.
Yeah.
It just means that it'll go back to the states, where states can make their own laws if they want to have restrictions, and if states don't want to have restrictions, they don't
I think
have
it's
to have
up to a
restrictions.
female, bro. I think it should be a female decision.
Okay.
It's her body. It's, you know.
Jo, problema ta, kad jo, aš apie tai paminėjau kaip pirmą kartą, kad tipo, jo, tipo, nu, kad steitai galės nuspręsti dėl abortų, bet ten, man atrodo, 15 ar kiek ten kažkur girdėjau skaičių 15, gal sukūriau, kad daug steitų turi, nu, tokius kaip tarsi iš karto, nu, pagal taip, kaip jų įstatymai veikia ir tipo, kaip jų taisyklės veikia, tik Roe Wade nukancelintų, iš karto pas juos būtų nelegalu abortas automatiškai. Tai tipo, jo, tai nėra techniškai prieš abortą, jeigu atšauktų, nu, bet tai taip veiktų praktikoje, I guess.
No. So if
Daugumoje
the man was
steitų,
carrying the
tipo.
baby, I feel like it'll be up to the man. But since the woman, you know, God has it, the woman gets to carry the baby, then it's up to her.
What about the law, though, of like Supreme Court putting it back to the states? Does that seem...
You can't put laws on people's bodies and people's... You know? Fuck off!
I assume you know that guy.
No.
No?
Nah, bro, they can't be talking just because we're doing something and, you know.
Yeah. So you don't think that states should be allowed to have restrictions on it?
No, I don't think the federal or the state should have it. I think it should be up to the parents, to the parental. It's a parental thing.
Depending on the age.
Yeah.
Depending on the age.
Depending on the age, you think there should be restrictions?
It's another way of controlling the population.
Controlling what we do, basically, you know?
So you say you think it's a good thing to control the population that
No,
way?
not at all, because it depends on what they're doing, because it seemed like back in the days, Plan B was all in, like, black people's neighborhoods.
Yeah, well, do you know Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, they set up shop, these abortion clinics in black neighborhoods because she wanted to abort more black babies.
So they can have the race going down.
Right.
So, you know?
So that's a bad thing if you're saying that.
Pala, tas pasakymas. Planned Parenthood įsteigė tos savo, nu, atidarė savo tos, nu, Planned Parenthood institucijas in black neighborhoods, so they could abort more black babies. O alternatyviai negalėjo atidaryti, nes ten buvo didžiausia paklausa būtent abortams. Reiktų statistiką pažiūrėti, nes ši interpretacija Crowderio tokia jau įdomi, ne? Tipo, nežinau. Nu jo, tu atidarysi taškuose, kur, nu, tipo, daugiausiai kreipiasi žmonės. Tame nieko blogo nėra ir tada vat ateina Crowderis interpretuoja šitaip, aš nežinau, skamba weird as shit, bet nežinau statistikos.
That maybe make you think about abortion
At the end
twice?
of the day, I feel like this, right? We in America, right? At the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be like
To abort more black babies.
So they can have the race going down.
Right.
So, you know?
Turi linką, aš galiu čia jungti? Ai, nu, zaibės ir kaip man tą linką jungti ir jis nepalinkino apačioj. Nes jis į kažkokį USA Today story, ai, nu va. Va, kas palinkinta, blet, tai yra, kas palinkinta. USA Today svetainė, /story/opinion. Ir dabar, nu, niekas gyvenime linko šito nesuves, nes tingės galų gale, aš irgi tingiu ir nevesiu. Nu, bet tai yra story opinion. Ir ten matau iš tagų Racism, Eugenics, Margaret Sanger deserves no honors column. Ir jis kažkokį vat opinion piece paskaitė ir jį patikė kaip įrodymą tam, kad Planned Parenthood įsteigė tos juodose rajonuose, kad tipo užmuštų daugiau juododžių vaikų. Ir jis remiasi opinion piece iš USA Today, nežinau, ar čia geras šaltinis apskritai. Nu, tipo, okei. Šaunuolis Crowderis.
So that's a bad thing if you're saying that. So that does that maybe make you think about abortion
at the end
twice?
of the day, I feel like this, right? We in America, right? At the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be like freedom. You feel me?
Yeah.
You know. So at the end of the day, why? You know what I'm saying? We don't have the freedom to do what we want to do. It's not really like, you know.
I mean, I understand, but so the other side of the argument that people have is, and I'm curious here because he said woman, so he's basically, this is him saying he wants to punt, he wants to go to you. You know, he's like, have her answer, he doesn't want to piss you off.
Yeah.
But you understand the other side of the argument is if someone, you know, if scientists and if biologists say, well, it's not really that person's body if it's a baby in their body. That's why, for example, like Texas, their limitation is a heartbeat. Once there's a separate heartbeat, they're saying you can't have an abortion.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense because listen to heartbeat, then how can you say that's not murder?
Right.
Yeah, that is.
So then maybe you would. So you think Texas should be allowed to place a limitation like at a heartbeat, maybe?
At a heartbeat seems like it
there
meets
should
everybody
be definitely
halfway.
a specification of once it gets to a certain standard and certain stage, you should be able to and should be able not to.
What did you get?
Definitely, yeah, once it has a heartbeat, I don't think.
Okay. So you said this is your you two are together?
Yeah.
So you have 3 kids, you said?
We got 4.
You got 4 kids. So you did the ultrasound,
Yeah.
and I just had my first twins. So you remember that first? Yeah.
Congratulations.
They're tough.
Yeah.
By the way, anyone who tells you that boys and girls aren't different, bullshit. Go and have 1 boy and 1 girl twin. You know, she starts talking really young, and she's verbal, and he's just but then he's just jumping and running around. Oh yeah, more action. Yeah. It's not even close.
One more action, no talking.
Oh yeah, the bullshit that all the rich white.
He has 3 girls and 1 boy.
Yeah, all the rich white liberal who try and be like, it's all society. I'm like, no. I have not taught anything to these twins. That is a boy.
Exactly.
That is a girl.
How they supposed to act.
Yeah. She grabs something, she tries to put it in her mouth. He grabs something, he tries to hit you with it.
Yeah.
That's right what he does.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly it.
So you remember that first ultrasound where you saw the heartbeat?
Yeah, of course.
So you would say that's at that point that's a life.
Oh, God, that's it.
Okay.
It's a life.
That's a life.
Well then, look, that's kind of why I was having this conversation, because the Supreme Court, before this ruling now of overturning Roe v. Wade, Texas wouldn't have had the right to say, okay, after a heartbeat you can't have an abortion. So now the overturning of Roe v. Wade means Texas can have that law.
Okay.
So that seems like something that...
Okay, tai... Jo, tai... Okay, tai tie steitai visi, kurie iš karto padarytų abortus nelegalius automatiškai, kai tik Roe versus Wade cancelintų, I guess Roe versus Wade overwritino tam tikrus dalykus, ką steitai norėtų daryti. O Jėzų damašinas, tai mes apie tai ir kalbam, ir aš apie tai ir kalbu, literally viską, ką kalbėjau apie tai. Ar tu tik ką įsijungiai, buvai nuėjęs, man viską pakartot dabar, ar kaip? Aš čia būtent tas ir yra klausimas. Do people really know what Roe versus Wade is? Ir aš apie tai šnekėjau ir prieš video ir viską. Pačioj pradžioj pasakė, blet, aš nekartosiu aš visko, bet tai ne tas dalykas. Jis taip gali veikti, bet techniškai Roe versus Wade ne tą reiškia. But that's the whole point of this whole thing. Čia visa diskusija apie tai ir yra būtent. Nes pažiūrėjau, tik ką pasakė, žiūrėjau. Teksasas norėtų neleisti aborto nuo heartbeat, jeigu yra separate heartbeat ir jis, nori neleisti. Bet Roe versus Wade kaip ir neleidžiam to daryti. Tai pats Roe versus Wade nėra kaip, kad galėtų visi abortus darytis. Bet toks kaip overridina steitų taisyklės tam tikras. Jeigu Roe versus Wade cancelina, tai taip palieka tada sprendimą steitams nuspręsti, ar leis ar ne. Tai techniškai tada Teksase ir dar kituose steituose pasidaro tada nelegalus abortas. Bet pats tas Roe versus Wade nėra, kaip čia, nėra taip, kad jeigu atšaukia jį, tai nėra teisė leidžianti abortus darytis. Tai atšaukus, tu neprarandi teisės abortus darytis, bet tai lieka steitams. O kai kurie steitai iš karto, neleis dėl to, kad atšaukia tą. Tai techniškai gaunas taip. Bet, žodžiu. Bet čia, daug niuansų ir kaip bebūtų. Čia dabar tik 6 minutės pažiūrėjom, tik tą išgirdom kol kas.
Well, they couldn't though. It was technically illegal for Texas to do that.
Yeah, they're becoming more liberal.
But so we would see. I think that's a good place to find common ground. In other words, you have people who are abortion all the way up to 9 months, and being a mother, I would assume you're like that's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
Then you have some people who think no abortions, but a heartbeat, good place to start.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. A heartbeat is a good place.
I think that's a lot of people in the country, but unfortunately, you see the protests, you see the media making it seem like something it isn't, and people go nuts.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of people are kind of like you on a sliding scale.
People just don't know what they want.
Yeah.
That's what it is. People don't know what they want.
Yeah. Because a heartbeat is, they can start hearing it now at 6 weeks, but certainly 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Because, I remember seeing that, the little heart, be like, oh my gosh. I don't know about you as a dad, but for me, I was just paranoid. Or I'm like, all right, just make sure she doesn't take any stairs and falls down. I'm like, because we can't do anything. Baby's not in us. We're just like, just don't do anything that could hurt the baby.
Keep her in a bubble.
Yeah, that's exactly. Put her like a bubble wife. All right, well, thank you guys. I appreciate you. Thanks for educating me on that too. What was your name, by the way?
Sarah.
Sarah? Nice to meet you, Sarah. What's your name?
Sierra.
Sierra. Sierra and Sarah. All right, I'll try and get it straight. So, look, we're just asking people today, have you been following sort of the leak of the alleged overturning of Roe v. Wade?
I'm not really following completely.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you nodded your head yes.
I mean, I followed it for, the leak is horrible, but I followed the abortion controversy for a while. I've had my stance on I think we should have safe abortions.
Okay. So what do you think about the Roe v. Wade, about it being overturned? If it likely happens.
I think it's a war on women, to be honest. I mean, I think it affects everybody.
Okay.
Not just women.
How so?
I mean, if man's out cheating, he doesn't want his mistress getting pregnant, she gets pregnant, what can you do?
That's kind of letting a piece of guy off the hook, though, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. But it sucks.
Yeah, it shouldn't be cheating.
Yeah.
What is it that you said war on women? What is it that you think will happen to women specifically if Roe v. Wade is, overturned? Let's act as though it's going to be overturned. I know it's a leak, but
yeah, I just think it just takes away that choice, and it just sucks.
But let me ask you, why do you think it takes away that choice? What do you think happens when Roe v. Wade gets overturned? I think this is something that a lot of people maybe are a little confused about.
It gives the states the choice to gives the states the choice to choose what they want to do. But I think I mean I may be wrong, but I think some states have already banned Plan B, something like that.
There was a rumor about, I think it was Tennessee or Mississippi.
Yeah,
it's
something
not
like
true.
that. Okay,
it just means you have to get it from a doctor, not just get it, pick it up at a CVS.
Oh, not just pick it up at CVS. Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but yeah. I mean, it just sucks. I don't really have much more than that. I just think...
Plan B, ką būtent Plan B? Let's read about this for a moment. Contingency plan. Ne. Ko aš būtent ieškau, čia nėra. Va. Hormonal medication, which is used in a number of birth control methods. It is combined with an estrogen to make combination birth control pills. Okay. As an emergency birth control, sold under the brand name Plan B, among others, is useful within 72 hours. This should not be confused with Ella1, which can be effective within 120 hours, 5 days. Okay, tai čia grinai, kaip tai veikia, man įdomiau gal. Common side effect, nausea, breast tenderness, headaches, decreased irregular menstrual bleeding when used to manage contraceptive. When used as an emergency contraceptive, if pregnancy occurs, there is no evidence that its use harms the baby. Taip. How does it work? Temporarily stopping the release of an egg from the ovary, preventing fertilization, preventing a fertilized egg from attaching to the uterus by changing the uterine lining. Okay, šitaip, okay. Tai, balandžiai atskrido 3, einu jos vaikyti, fuck you guys. Jie atskrenda ir žiūri mane, ar aš ateisiu pas juos ar ne, blet. Pradedu eiti, 2 nuskrenda, tas vienas, kur čia gimė pas mane balkonė, dar pasilieka, žiūri, aš tikrai ateisiu, kur... Gerai. Tai gerai, jeigu jie tą Plan B, ne tai, kad, vėlgi, sako, nori uždrausti, ne? Neuždraudė, bet norėjo ar ne? Ne, padarė, ar norėjo padaryti, ar padarė taip, kad, nu, negalėtum pirkti tiesiog vaistinį be recepto, nes, nu, kad tipo daktaras turėtų užrašyti. Dabar problema yra Amerikoje turbūt tai, kad čia su draudimais pas jos bus susiję net paprastas apsilankimas pas daktarą kainuoja dahuja ir pinigų, ir laiko. Tai tu realiai ką padarai? Sumažini prieigą prie to dalyko. Tai vėlgi, jo, neuždraudė, bet jeigu tu sumažini prieigą, nu tai efektyviai veikia, kaip, nu, žmogus negalės naudoti ir turbūt tie, kuriem labiausiai reikės. Aš nežinau, reiktų statistiką gal pažiūrėti paskui, ten jeigu juodaodžių rajonuose tose ir vietose Planned Parenthood daugiausia ir jiem daugiausia paklausa yra, tai bus turbūt tie žmonės, kur mažiausiai gali sau leisti varinėti pas daktarus ir siuntimus gauti, receptus gauti. I don't know. Atrodo kaip tiesiog jo. Bet pala, nu ble, čia jo, gali būti, dėl to turbūt žmonės ir bijo, kad sekantis žingsnis tada būtų tiems vaistams, jeigu Roe vs. Wade cancelintų.
Think that the states should have the right to be able to determine abortion laws? Because it won't change the laws in like, yeah, that's all Roe v. Wade overturning means that Colorado, you know, can have abortion, like they have all the way up until 9 months, and Texas can have a heartbeat bill.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know yet. I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, that is what's going to happen, right? It's not like there won't be a federal ban on abortion. So it's just, it'll happen on a state level where states can place restrictions, which they weren't allowed to before. Yeah. And now it allows the states to place restrictions.
Yeah.
And that's based on like people voting for that in each state, right?
Yeah, they're representatives. Yeah. I mean, the Overturning.
Kaip bando Crowderis vartytis, nes jis negali sakyti, kad, nu, tai depends on people voting, nes, kaip suprantu, nėra ne vieno stato, kuris nori, kad Roe vs. Wade cancelintų pagal people voting. Man atrodo, literally nei vieno stato nėra, kuriam balsuotų, kad nori, nu, tipo, kad cancelintų. Bet, vat, Crowderis dabar negali to sakyti, nes čia ne žmonių norai. Tai, vat, jis sako, nu, the representatives.
People voting for that in each state, right?
Yeah, they're representatives. Yeah, I mean, the overturning of Roe v. Wade is the Supreme Court justices, obviously, so that's not a voting issue. You don't really vote them; they have lifetime appointments. But it's after that. Yeah, if the people of Texas want to have a limitation, or of Oklahoma, they.
Ble, tai taip gaunasi jo. Niekas nenori, kad Roe vs. Wade nukancelintų. Tai, nu, jie yra pro-choice. Bet tada kiekvienas statas turės asmeniškai, nu, individualiai kovoti dėl aborto teisės, kurią praras, jeigu tą cancelins. Tai, nu, ir jeigu nei vienas statas Amerikoje nenori, kad cancelintų, tai už abortą, tai kodėl tada reikia jį cancelinti? Tam, kad kiekvienas statas turėtų teisę po šitą iš naujo spręsti, žmonės turės vėl balsuoti, bet niekas nepaliks balsavimui. Arba tai užtruks 50 metų. Šiaip būna, kai receptą žmogus gauna, papildomai pasiema ir draugam parduoda, Lietuvoje taip yra. Ar kai pažįstami, jie dirba vaistinėse, bet anyway, in the end dauguma visi ant vaistų nepasieks. Jo, kaip būtų, tiesiog sumažina accessibility. O ten, nu, tie visi, nu, čia ne argumento dalis, žinai, nu, juodoji rinko gali nusipirkti, nu, jo, viskas, yeah.
They can do it, and if the people of Colorado or Virginia or California don't want to, they don't have to.
Rather than like federally?
Yeah, federally what happened with Roe v. Wade was basically, particularly in the first trimester, states were not allowed to place restrictions. Okay. And so recently, you know, there was a bill that, there was a case that went up and challenged it. Where they said, well, we should have the right to, in this state, place restrictions in our state. And they said, yeah, Roe v. Wade is kind of bad law because, you know, there's no constitutional right to an abortion. So it should be determined by the states.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has a different opinion, so, you know, that's all. But we're going to go get some food.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
God, that's so random.
Sarah?
Sarah,
all right, okay. All right, so, Darian, we're just talking with people now. You know, there were these big protests here a few days ago, so we didn't really want to get into that fray. You don't end up having very productive conversations. Have you've heard about the leak, Roe v. Wade being overturned?
Stephen just told me about it, actually.
Okay.
You know, I haven't been keeping up. But
they're
telling me about, you know, how some people are taking it as if they're just abolishing abortion.
Right. That's how. That's what a lot of the protests were. Yeah.
Right. But from what he was saying, that's not the case.
Right.
So I'd like to get to know a little bit more information about that. But
okay. So we kind of have two separate issues, I guess, sort of, and it doesn't really matter. We've addressed this. I don't know if you're pro-life or pro-choice.
It depends on how far along the pregnancy is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That relates exactly to Roe v. Wade. So Roe v. Wade basically was a case where they specifically barred states from setting any kind of limitations on abortion in the first trimester. And so some laws, like the Texas heartbeat law, or there was a case in Mississippi that went up to the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court just ruled that, you know what, states can determine their own abortion laws.
Okay.
So with Roe v. Wade being overturned, it does mean that some states can outright ban abortion if they want, or they can place limitations like, the heartbeat, which is well within the first trimester. And then a place like Colorado or Virginia or New Jersey, they can have their late-term abortion laws, which they have. They allow abortions well into the third trimester. States can determine their own abortion laws.
Okay.
So with Roe v. Wade being overturned, it does mean that some states can outright ban abortion if they want, or they can place limitations like, the heartbeat, which is well within the first trimester. And then a place like Colorado or Virginia or New Jersey, they can have their late-term abortion laws, which they have. They allow abortions well into the third trimester. It just makes it a scenario where it goes back to the states. They can determine their own laws regarding abortion limitations.
Right, okay.
So that's the fallout from it. What do you think about that?
I think states should have their own. I think states should have their own, depending on where you are. But I don't see a problem with everyone being under one ideology as well. Like you said, depending on how far along the child is, I would say it's almost murder if the child is, alive and it's not just a fetus. And,
right.
But, early along in the pregnancy, I'm definitely pro-choice in regards to that.
Okay. When would you determine kind of what?
I'd say after the first trimester.
After the first trimester?
Yeah, I'd say after the first.
So after 12 weeks?
Correct.
Okay.
Kaip ir visam pasaulyje, for the most part.
Like there is a heartbeat before that. That there's a separate heartbeat, so that's the basis for some
Do
of these
not
laws.
care.
There's a separate heartbeat that you can't abort, or the thing that, for example, the toes are developed or certain organs. So
that's
I wonder what changes, for example, from week 11 to week 12.
Right.
And this is a conversation everyone has.
And for me, I don't know, when the baby. I would say this, because like you said, I don't know exactly when the heartbeat, starts. But I would say if the heartbeat if it's alive, I would say adoption would be, a better choice as opposed to, taking a life.
Well, you get the heartbeat like at 6 weeks, and then you get a more developed heart. It's like they say it's a tube, but the heart develops. And are you a dad at all? Do you have any kids?
Oh yeah, I have 3. Yeah.
Okay, so did you ever do the ultrasound where you see the heartbeat?
Oh yeah.
So that's well before the end of the first trimester.
You're actually right about that, yeah.
And did you feel like that was...
Čia prasideda vėl ta pati diobana diskusija, nuo kada gyvybė yra iki kad... Just... No one cares. Blet. Ta riba brėžti, žinai, parodo tą čartą, čia 1 savaitė, 2 savaitė, 3 savaitė, 4 savaitė, kada tau atrodo jau žmogus, kada ne. I don't care. 12 savaitė atrodo visam Europoje, ten ir, tose šalyse atrodo reasonable. Ten atrodo tyrimai padaryti, kada ta gyvybė gali kažkaip ten independent thought turėti ir kažkaip išsivysto, kas yra ten vėliau biškai. Tai atrodo visi sutarė, 12 savaičių, atrodo reasonable, Lietuvoje taip ir atrodo reasonable. Bet čia tada pradeda Crowderis pasakot, tai kada ten nykštys pasimatys, kada ten pirštas jau bus susiformavęs. Ir taip mėgina apeliuoti jau visiškai irrelevant dalykus ir kas su Roe versus Wade čia nesusiję, net nežinau kom, bet čia nuėgės kalbas random žmogum. God damn.
Alive when you saw that heartbeat?
Yeah, exactly. I do.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, I better not. I don't know about you, but I had twins. I was just paranoid where I was like, all right, I just got to make sure you don't fall down the stairs.
Right, exactly.
Because there's nothing much you can do.
Exactly. It's a life you need to protect.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm all for that. So that's why I say first trimester, only because of my lacking of knowledge of when the heartbeat actually starts.
Okay. So then you would, in other words, before Roe v. Wade being overturned, a heartbeat bill would not be allowed because that's in the first trimester. But now with Roe v. Wade overturned, states can set a heartbeat bill. So you would say, okay, they should have the right to do that. A state.
I would say no. Not after the heartbeat.
No, well that's what I'm saying. A state can set that limitation.
I would say,
whereas right now they can't set that limitation.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So then, so it's pretty reasonable. Then it seems like, you're kind of like most Americans, where most Americans consider themselves pro-choice until a certain point.
Right.
It gets a little bit difficult when you ask Americans to define where that point is. Kind of like we just experienced now. But I do think that it's, being a little misrepresented if you've seen the protests, and I'm sure you probably might have been under the impression at one point that overturning Roe v. Wade was a ban on abortion.
Right.
Yeah, that's not the case. It just
Not the case, tiesiog bus toks efektas. Ir niekas nenori, nei vienam state, aš tą cituoju, bet man atrodo taip, ir nei vienam state nenori, kad jis būtų cancelintas, tai žmogaus, aiškus, kai jis nenori, kad abortas būtų, teisė būtų atšaukta, bet tada daugumoje state, nedaugumoje state, ten daug state iš karto pasidarys nelegalus, jeigu jie šauks. Tai turės 5 ar 10 metų kovoti. Čia, kur sakiau, Destiny vakar pradėjau žiūrėti, nedabaigiau, kur pasikvietė 3 law practice ir žmonės, ten advokatai, nežinau. Ir jie kalbėjo apie tai. Tai buvo klausimai, kas tai yra ir panašiai. Ir tada galutinis klausimas, kurį aš šiandieną paklausysiu, atsakys gal, kad gerai, net jeigu tai nėra geras įstatymas, ar jis turėtų būti atšauktas? Nes tame irgi dar yra klausimas, nes precedentinis čia yra dalykas, kad jeigu jie atšauks, turės masyvės pasiekmes, ar tada turėtų būti atšauktas. Tai bus įdomu ir tą paklausyti, bet čia tai dialogas, nežinau, su tais random žmonėms čia nieko neišsprendžia, tik Crowderis gali pasirodyti kaip ne visiškas dalbajobas.
Just goes back to the states. Do you think that at the very least that's a reasonable decision for the court to make?
I think that is a reasonable decision, yeah.
Okay, that's about it, yeah. And I think you agree with most Americans. And I think if you take the time to do, like I said, a little more research on it.
Bet most Americans nenori, kad atšauktų.
I'm not lying, but I encourage you to.
Ai, bet jie nežino, kas tas yra.
Make sure you talk with other people about it, because the more people know
Sneaky
what Roe v.
Crowder.
Wade is, and then it goes to the states, then we'll have less division in this country, as opposed to yelling about banning abortion and it not being, my body, my choice, all the way up until 9 months. I mean, let me ask you this, because the most radical abortion bills that they would consider, on those on the left, would be things like the heartbeat bill that exists right now, or like the Mississippi law. But in states like Colorado, or places like Virginia, they can abort all the way up to 9 months.
Oh, wow.
Jo, čia tai absurdas.
Let's say we take the extreme. Abortion all the way up until 9 months, or a complete ban. What would you be more comfortable with? Because one is already happening, abortion up till 9 months. It's happening right now. The ban doesn't exist.
Like, I'm pro-life, so I would say a complete ban over all the way up to 9 months. If we're going, if I have to choose an extreme,
you would choose the ban.
I would choose, yeah.
Galima Discord'e, galima? Ar tiesiog prisijungti, ar tu pakalbėti nori apie kažką? Ką užpauzinčiau video.
That's not a poll that's out there. I think probably a lot of Americans would feel that way. We're not there. That's not what we have to decide.
Right.
But the truth is, a lot of people don't know that right now this happens in many states. I mean, there are some states, I don't know if you're aware of, it was Elizabeth Warren, Klobuchar, a few people, Democrats voted against the Infants Born Alive Act. And what was happening in places like, I believe, Illinois, Virginia, I don't know the exact states, babies that survived abortions were being left to die. And the bill just demanded that babies that survived abortions just be legally required the same medical attention that all babies are given, as opposed to just because you don't want them, but they already survived the abortion. They've come out of birth canal. And there were a lot of Democrats who voted against.
Galiu užsimūtinti šitą. Tam ir sėdžiu aš ten. Tose Open Discord. Grįžtam dabar prie abortų temos. O aš dar tik 17 minučių pažiūrėjau šitą Roe vs. Wade. Čia tiek pauzinau aš tą video. Okay, žiūrim toliau.
Really?
Because they thought that was infringing on abortion rights.
That's not right, man. It's not right. They do deserve the same treatment. Now,
vienas dalykas, kas labai apsunkina filmavimą gatvėje, aš pažadu, nebepauzinsiu taip dažnai, tai va tie garsai visokie iš gatvės ir tas audio triukšmas toks, nes jo neina sukontroliuoti, kai namie ten, žinai, gali ten garso izoliaciją užsidėti, viską, paimpruvintą garsą kažkiek. Vat kai gatvėje filmuoja, tai tiesiog labai sunku tą padaryti, nebent ten visiems duodi tos asmeninius mikrofonus, kur labai ten arti būna, bet, I guess, to, gyvai nedalins mikrofonų, žinai, tai jie taip jau būna.
Are there any birth defects that go along with surviving?
Not necessarily, no. It's just if a baby survived an abortion that they attempted to abort and the baby survived it, there were instances where they weren't being given medical care.
That's not right.
Yeah, there's actually, you can watch an interview with the governor of Virginia saying that what would happen in that instance is we would keep the baby comfortable and then have a discussion with them.
Visai smagu čia pas tave iš pat ryto, kai bent sugalvojau, ką veikti. Smagu būna, kai kažkas ateina pašnekėti, dažniausiai tai neteina. Čia pirmo pašnekovo aš 2 savaitės, man atrodo, ar 11 dienų laukiau, kol atėjo pirmas. Ir tai ten buvo mano pažįstami pirmai. Bet tada porą tokių vis būna, kur ateina pašnekėti. Patinka jo, ką žinau. Ypač, kai jau pamastyti reikia temą kokią. Ta, kodėl manęs nemėgsta streameriai, tai žinokit, jau tiek kartų apkalbėta, čia jau grinai reikia dažnai užduodamus klausimus įdėti. Yra kelios pagrindinės priežastys ir ta turbūt pagrindinė. Tada, aišku, kita dasideda, kad kai kurie bernai manęs nemėgsta, nes kai kuriam streameriam panom sutariau geriau negu jie įgės ir jie labai užpavydėjo to. Kiti ten šiaip insecure gal jaučias dėl savo problemų, ten, nu, čia labai priklauso, bet manau pagrindinė dėl to, kad, nu, aš esu toksai pikto žodžio negailintis. Aš sakyčiau, aš labai gerai mimikinu, kaip čia, tą žmogų, kuris su manim bendrauja. Jeigu su manim bendrauja agresyviai, aš tada kažkaip irgi labai agresyviai pradėsiu bendrauti. Ką turbūt reiktų man patobulinti, tipo kažkaip mėginti nuimti tą agresiją dialogų, kad tada gal, nu, žmogus pradėtų normaliau bendrauti. Bet aš daug dažniau, bent jau anksčiau gyvenime, matchindavau. Jeigu ateina piktai keiksmažodžiai su manim bendrauja, ten stumimais arba tokia ironija, tada aš irgi gal to pačiu atsakydavau. Ir tada jie ant manęs dar labiau supykdavo. Tai, tipo, labai neproduktyvu. Vat, gal kažkaip ir įmanoma. Aišku, ne su visais žmonėm tas bus įmanoma, bet gal ir įmanoma kažkaip biškai, nu, diffusint tą situaciją, kad gal nuimti tą pradinę agresiją ir tą pokalbį daryti. I don't know, bet jo, čia tiesiog praktikos reikia. Aš prieš keletą metų iš visų žmonėm nemokėjau bendrauti niekaip, dabar daug geriau yra, bet dar toli gražu, kad kokią ten diskusiją normalią palaikyti, nu, ypač su žmogum, kuris agresyviai prieš tave nusiteikęs, gali būti vis tiek labai sunku, nes ten jau, žinai, ir savisaugai įsijungia, gynybiniai mechanizmai, ir ten ego, tada jau, nu, sunku sukontroliuoti tos dalykus, reikia daug praktikos ir, yeah. Gal vieną dieną. Gerai, žiūriu toliau.
The mother as to what she wants to do,
right?
Meaning you could still let that baby die, and that's happening today. So, in my opinion, that's more extreme than the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which just gives it back to the states,
right?
Because they'll still be able to do that in Virginia,
right?
As sick as it is to me, but they'll still be able to do it.
Yeah, that is sick.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah,
turns your stomach.
Yeah, that is.
So,
especially as a father,
how old are your little ones?
I have 10, 12, and 4.
10, 12, and 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're spaced out there. So
yeah.
I was gonna say you're not looking to an empty nest for a while with that 4-year-old.
No.
One of them will be telling you he hates you or she hates you, while the other one still thinks you're the best. You know, so
right.
Balance your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Darren. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
Hello. Hey. All right. You got 5 minutes to talk?
Yes, I'm
on.
Sure.
Great. What's your name?
Casey.
Casey. All right, Casey. Well, that ties in perfectly because we're talking about all these protests.
Casey,
a couple days ago here about the Roe v. Wade situation.
Sure, absolutely.
Have you been following that?
Yes.
Okay. So, first, let me ask you: you consider yourself pro-choice, pro-life, pro-choice with limitations? How would you define?
I'm definitely pro-choice.
Okay.
You know, I'm definitely pro-choice.
Okay. What's your opinion on it's a leak right now, obviously.
Sure.
But if it's true, the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
It's ridiculous, you know. As a woman, I think it's astronomical how we could consider, and no offense to you, but how a heterosexual male can tell me what I should and should not do with my body.
Okay.
And what that actually means. I think there's so many stipulations that go into this. You know, there's a lot of circumstances. And just so you know, I was told I couldn't have children.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But so this topic is like super sensitive to me and of course to my family. But I know
because you wouldn't need to have an abortion.
I wouldn't need to have one, but let's just say the opportunity ever arose itself. There's all kind of medical conditions and reasons, topical pregnancies, tubal pregnancies, things that have happened to your body that require abortions for medical reasons for us as women to like literally live and survive.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to say you're forcing me to either go through that experience and or heaven forbid, you know, my kid is, you know, there's all kind of testing that goes on early in your pregnancy.
Sure.
And they'll let you know that there's fluid on the brain for a baby or something like that, and they do not recommend you continuing on with that pregnancy. I'm also 31, and so a lot of us are getting pregnant later in life. So sometimes that's an issue, right? And it could be a health risk for the mother and the baby. So whatever your reasoning is, more importantly, you could just be 18 and decide that that's not the decision that you want to make today and you're not comfortable with that. You could be a victim of rape. I don't care what your reasoning is. I think it's 100% your choice to decide.
So none of those other things matter then? We could have just eliminated all that.
Yeah.
Just you think people should really get an abortion for whatever reason?
I think you should be able to make any decision as far as HIPAA laws are concerned, for yourself and your body at any time.
So what is your, because a lot of people have different interpretations or understandings of what the overturning of Roe v. Wade is.
Actually means?
Yeah. What is your interpretation of what would happen if Roe v. Wade is overturned?
My interpretation is that it doesn't matter what your reasoning is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that abortions will now be illegal or released in the state of Texas for anybody.
Beveik pataikė.
No.
Correct me.
No, it's not. No, it's, and
Beveik
that's,
pataikė.
it gives the right to states to make their own laws regarding abortion restrictions.
Sure.
So,
Bet tai padarys Texas illegal.
New Jersey, Virginia, California, the states that have abortion laws all the way up until and including 9 months, they can still do that.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think Texas is going to vote in which direction?
Well, I don't want to get, I'll get into my opinion in a second.
100% Teksasas nelegalu bus.
We agree on the fact that it's good or bad law. So it's not banning abortion. It puts it back to the states.
I don't agree with that.
Okay. So what do you think should happen? Do you think there should be a federal, it should be enshrined into federal law that abortion is a constitutional right?
I think it took a long time for Roe versus Wade to even become about and to pass. And that if we aren't careful, history will continue to repeat itself over and over again. So the fact that that law is what it is, I don't know why we're going back and trying to now tweak that. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, are you, and forgive me, this is not meant to be a gotcha at all. This law is complicated, and Roe v. Wade is complicated. You know, that's why you had Roe v. Wade, then you had Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and these, it's always been a complex issue.
And I'm Casey.
Yes, exactly. See, we tie that's called a callback. But Roe v. Wade, the issue was, right, Roe v. Wade was sort of under the guise, it was settled under the guise of the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause.
Okay.
So there's no constitutional right to an abortion. Okay. And it's interesting because you just mentioned sort of the HIPAA laws. Sure. And the idea was that under the Due Process Clause, there's a right to privacy, which also isn't necessarily a constitutional right, but under the Due Process Clause, that a woman had that right to privacy with her.
Čia tas, there is no constitutional right to an abortion. Čia visa ta diskusija dar labai sudėtinga yra. Kad tas pats Supreme Courtas yra pripažinęs, kad there are implied rights. Tai yra, tai kaip suprantu, tai reiškia, kad konstitucija gal nėra parašyta, kad, tu turi teisę į abortą, arba tu turi teisę į X, bet iš kitų konstitucijoje parašytų punktų tu gali implyinti teisės. Tai yra implied rights from constitution. Tai tas pasakymas, kad, abortai nėra konstitucinė teisė, aš nežinau, ten yra labai daug, man atrodo, ginčių tarp tų pačių advokatų ir panašiai, kad tam tikros teisės yra implyintos ir kad tas abortas tipo iš health care pusės ir panašiai yra kaip implyinta teisė, bet čia yra tokie sudėtingi dalykai, kur, aš tikrai nežinau ir random žmonės gatvėje tikrai irgi nežinos ir čia advokatai ir tie justice'ai Supreme Court'o aiškinas, žinai, forever, bet, čia kontekstas, I guess, tai minčiai.
Her doctor and allowed states to set limitations only after the first trimester. So it bans states setting limitations within the first trimester.
Absolutely, okay.
And then you have states that, for example, have had like a heartbeat bill, things that occur before the second trimester. That kind of kicked it up to the Supreme Court, and they looked at it, and this is something that even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, where they said, you know what, this is just sort of bad law, so it has to go back to the states.
Okay.
So that was the basis for Roe v. Wade. Does that change your opinion at all that there's no constitutional right to an abortion?
Not necessarily, because when we talk about first trimester, I think I also don't agree that after your first trimester you should be looking at options as far as abortion, right? Because at this point, your fetus is a full-grown fetus. There's things that are happening, your baby's developing. So I understand up until that point.
Okay.
But on a state-to-state basis or a federal basis, to me, I guess in that first trimester, it's still up to me and my doctor.
So it sounds to me like you're saying you do support eliminating abortion as an option after the first trimester.
I do. I agree with that.
Okay.
Beje, man atrodo, vėlgi, didžioji dauguma žmonių, man atrodo, pritartų, kad ten 12 savaičių yra toks magiškas ir realus skaičius, bet ten kur yra steitų, kur 9 mėnesiai tu neši ir vis tiek gali pasidaryti abortą, čia skamba fucking ridiculous, ne? Tipo, tu jau toj gimdai, tai jau visiškai pilnas vaikas, tarkim, ten kiti, kai tik pagimdo ten savaitę ar ten porą savaičių anksčiau. Tai, čia skamba visiškai absurdas. Bet tai nereiškia, kad reikia visą Roe versus Wade, visą tą overturnint. Nereiškia, kad tada 15 ten ar whatever state'ų turėtų būti nelegalu iš viso, tiesiog galbūt reiktų tą pakeisti tuose state'uose įstatymą, gal kažkaip ir balsuoti ir panašiai. I don't know. Bet, jo.
what changes, for example, from week 11 to week 12 that makes it no longer acceptable?
Eyeballs, fingers, toes, hair. I mean, you're going from this small cell. I mean,
but that happens before the second trimester.
Well, but the thing is...
Ir vėl, Crowderis nori pašnekėti apie Roe versus Wade, ir vėl grįžtam prie to, tai kurioj stadijoje dabar, toj nuo 9 mėnesių stadijoje yra vaikas tampa vaiku. Ir vat jis bando vėl tą aborto diskusiją turėti. Ne apie Roe versus Wade, kaip title pavadintas, bet vėl aborto diskusiją. Vat ir su moterim kalba, ir vis prieina prie to, bet taigi aborto temą turbūt neįmanoma kitaip šnekėti. Visą laiką prieisi gerai, tai kur čia parodyk, kurioj vietoj tau yra gerai jų gyvybė, kuriam ne. Ir jeigu tu sakysi pagal nagus ir pagal kažką viską, tai tada iš karto Crowderis žino, kada ten išsiformuoja nagai ir panašiai, ten kada ten pirštus turi ir panašiai. Okay.
Why is plan B a thing, right? There's a reason why day after something, you can go into CVS right now and a young lady can say, I know I did whatever I did last night and I'm going to make sure that I protect myself.
So did what I did, I'm assuming sex.
Sure. Yeah. And so to me, you saying, okay, here at this point in time, there's people who I'm not a doctor, right, obviously. I wouldn't be wearing this.
Spoiler alert, neither am I. Yeah. I don't know if you can tell.
So, somebody somewhere sat down and said, this makes sense, who gets paid a lot more money than me and understands the anatomy of the human body. But yeah, no, I don't...
But that's kind of the issue though, right? Is no one has sit down and said it made sense. For example, in a place like Colorado, you can have an abortion all the way up until 8-9 months.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
Okay. And that'll still be the law in Colorado.
Sure.
And in Virginia, you had the governor where there were babies...
Jo, 15 statų ar kažkiek visai nelegalu iš vis bus.
Because technically they tried to abort them. They'll still be allowed to do that in Virginia.
Well, what's the difference between that and some girl throwing herself down the stairs? People are going to do what they want to do when they want to do it.
Well, no, this is about babies who were born who survived abortions and they were just leaving it in a room to die.
Sure, but you're saying in Colorado at 8 months, it's still legal for them to get abortions, which I didn't know. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so if a lady's 8 months pregnant and she's just in dire whatever mental state and she decides she doesn't want to have that kid, what is to stop her from jumping off the top of this building and or pushing herself down the stairs?
Well, I don't know. Hopefully there'd be some bars in the window.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Right.
But I'm just trying to understand your position because it's something that's obviously a heated issue and I'm trying to see where there is common ground. It sounded to me like you were saying after the second trimester, no abortion, but...
Ko Crowderis nesupranta čia? Taip, man atrodo labai daug žmonių nepalaiko aborto po, ten 9 mėnesį. Bet tai nereiškia, kad reikia visur užbaninti, kad ir ten 2 savaitę, arba to labiau kontraceptikus užbaninti. Tai yra skirtingi dalykai, ko Crowderis nesupranta, kad žmogus gali tą poziciją turėti, jos nėra mutually exclusive, kad tu arba vieną turi rinktis, arba kitą. Arba tu už abortus, arba prieš abortus. Ne, jeigu 9 mėnesį tu nepritari, bet tu gali pritarti prie 12. Nes kaip jis pats sakė, visi žmonės skirtingai brėžia tą ribą, kur čia gyvybė, kur ne. Ir kaip suprantu, čia ta riba tokia nubrėžta ties 12 savaičių čia ir Europai, kur žiūrėjau daug maž 12 savaičių, tai kai jau prasideda independent, nepriklausomos mintis pas tą tipo kūdikį ar kažkas tokio. Ir atrodo dauguma žmonių bent jau pritarė tai 12 savaičių tokiai kaip linijai ir atrodo viskas be problemų, bet Crowderis kažkaip nesupranta to. Nes jo, man irgi atrodo 9 mėnesį tai yra visiškas absurdas, kad gali darytis. Tai tuose steituose reiktų kažką gal keisti arba, balsavimui palikti, aš nežinau kaip ten, gal ir balsavo žmonės ir norėjo ir priėmė. Ir fine tada turėkit kaip turit. Bet dabar nukancelinti Roe versus Wade, būtų palikimas steitams patiems nuspręsti, bet tai nebūtų patiems nuspręsti, nes tai užtruktų, sakau, nuo 5 iki 10 metų. Nes nieks nenori kancelinti Roe versus Wade žmonės, reiškia, jie nenori, kad abortai būtų panaikinti, bet tuose steituose jie bus uždrausti. Ir žmonės turės N metų ten, kol jiems leis balsuoti ir to dar nepadarys, jų reprezentatyvai tie darys, kaip Crowderis sakė, kol galų galia nuspręs, kad gerai, abortai legalūs pas mus. Tai kam tada kancelinti, kai tiek precedentų jau yra ant to? Neskamba logiškai. O dabar man įdomu Destiny šitą debatą vakarykštį, kur pradėjau pažiūrėti iki galo, ką ten advokatai šnekės apie tai. Jis man atrodo daug produktyviau negu čia ką Crowderis šneka.
Now it sounds like you're saying, yeah, it should be fine for a place like Colorado to have abortions at 7, 8 months.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
I literally said I do not agree with that.
Okay, so you still think...
But what I don't think is that we should go so far back that we're saying every state should make their own opinion before the first trimester, after the second trimester, because to me, I live in Texas, I'm originally from California, and I know we vote very differently between
I hope that you're not one of those who comes from California and brings your politics here, because you left for a reason, right?
I didn't leave by choice. My parents brought me here.
Oh, okay.
So I think views are going to very much differ in living in the Bible Belt. I've seen, you know, how that can affect people. I've seen how it affects me as a black person, 112%. So
How so? What's the 12?
What's the 12%?
Yeah. What's the 12 past 100?
I literally went to a restaurant when I was 8 years old, and they told my cheerleading coach that I couldn't go into their restaurant because I was black, and that was in Texas, and it would never happen in California. So there's just things that
it definitely happens in California.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate
It
talking
definitely
to you.
happens in California.
This is really fun.
Okay.
No,
You were saying no racists in California? Come on, there's no way. Ever been to Venice? I've seen some. I lived in California too. I've definitely seen. I've seen racists everywhere. Yeah, definitely some neo-Nazis in California.
Okay, Crowder.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wasn't there a movie like American History X or something? Was that Longview, Texas?
I don't know
Maybe Tyler?
It's a really nasty way.
Have you been following this, the Roe v. Wade situation? All right. Can I ask you about it? Because we're just talking with people that, because there were these protests here all across, this lawn a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
And that's why we didn't ask people there, because it was pretty heated, and you don't really end up having good conversations. I'm Steven, by the way.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
Tammy?
Yes.
Is that spelled with a Y or an I?
Y.
Okay. So, Tammy, you said that you're pro-choice.
Yes.
Okay. Have you been following you haven't been following the Roe v. Wade situation?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion on, it's a leak, but alleged, but it seems like it's very likely that the court will overturn Roe v. Wade. What's your opinion on that? From your perspective as someone who's pro-choice, from what I understand, but specifically on this kind of piece of law?
I hope they don't revoke the entire Roe versus Wade legislation.
Okay.
I just hope that they make whatever current modifications they need to for, 2020 and to the future,
So I don't know, a lot of people are, because it gets confusing, right, with some of the Supreme Court and law and precedent, what happens with Roe v. Wade, a lot of people think that means there's a ban on abortion. It doesn't. What it means, if it gets overturned, is it goes back to states. So the states can place restrictions, or a state can ban abortion if they want. And then states like Colorado, like New Jersey, like California, that have abortions, all the way up until 9 months, can still do that, but it's on a state-by-state basis. What do you think about that, considering that that's what would happen?
I hope the local, state legislation, they will weigh both sides, the pro-choice and the pro-life.
Yeah.
And when I vote, I'll vote pro-choice.
Okay, you vote pro-choice, but do you think it's at least a reasonable decision to say states should have the right to decide?
Yeah.
Tai yra reasonable decision. Bet tame klausimas ir yra, kai tiek yra jau precedento ir kai tokia situacija ir kai tiek žmonių nenori, kad cancelintų, ar vis tiek turėtų cancelinti. Tai vat klausimas yra toks, tada tas klausimas, ar reasonable? Aišku reasonable, bet tada klaus kitokį klausimą, ar reasonable, kad necancelintų, kai yra tiek precedento ir tiek žmonių nori, kad necancelintų. Ir va čia yra klausimas, ką Crowderis tada pasakytų, ar yra reasonable galvoti, kad net jeigu, ar yra reasonable galvoti, kad nereikia cancelinti. Net jeigu teisiškai neparašytas geriausias įstatymas ar panašiai, bet tai yra precedentinis įstatymas, tai tas nuosprendis ir tiek jau laiko galiojo ir tokia kokia įtaka turėtų ir kiek žmonių nenori, kai jis būtų cancelintas, ar tada reasonable necancelinti jo. Bet Crowderis tokio klausimo tai neatsakys niekad, arba jeigu sakys, nereasonable sakys, nes teisė yra virš visko. All right, seni, bet nes tas klausimas, čia, ne iki galo mintis vystomas, nu, tipo, ne iki galo idėjas vystomas. Ar reasonable? Aišku, reasonable. Visi tam pritarė. Reasonable. Bet tada žiūrim toliau, giliau biškai, kokios pasiekmes, kiek žmonių to nori ir panašiai, ir kokios pasiekmes to grinai būtų.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you're not against the overturning of it, but you would like in your state for there to be access to abortion?
Yes,
Okay, that seems to be a lot of people. Most
in your state. Reikėjo klausti in all states, nes būtų lygiai taip pat pasakius, nes tas žmogus yra pro-choice.
But the media sort of framed it as though it's an outright ban on abortion, right? Which scares people.
Oh, God.
That's not really what happens. But let me ask you this. You're pro-choice. If you were to vote in your state, should there be any limitations on abortion at all? Where do we draw that line?
Tada davai aborto temą
what
dar.
would you like to see if you could wave your magic wand and have, any type of laws?
Well, what I would like to see is the medical community work with the families and help them to make those decisions. It's a private health decision, and so I hope that they will seek counsel from their medical providers.
Do you believe that there's a cutoff as far as abortion, where it should no longer be allowed?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I think the doctors can help.
Well, when do you think that should be, though? For example, so it sounds to me like you're not supporting, for example, states that have abortion up until and including 9 months. Does that seem, that seems too far?
Yeah, that's too far.
Okay.
Unless, like I said, it's case by case, medical case by case, and unless something is wrong with the fetus and the doctor has already determined that something has to happen.
Yeah.
I
Which is very rare, obviously, and they usually catch that well before 9 months. There's no medical reason for a 9-month abortion or 8-month or 7 months. So if you're living in Texas, where would you like to see that line drawn? Because different states will be able to establish their different laws. Would you like it to be, no abortions after the first trimester, second trimester, heartbeat? Where should the line be drawn for general abortions?
Again, I say just, I think you should seek help with your medical provider and let your OBGYN specialist assist you with making those decisions.
Okay.
Yeah,
So no limitations at the state level?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. In Texas?
In Texas.
All right. Well, there you go. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Next
all right, what's your name?
I'm Bella. Nice to meet you.
Bella? Nice to meet you, Bella. That's a pretty name. Until Thorne had to ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh my gosh.
So, Bella, are you familiar with it? Have you been following the Roe v. Wade?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Bella Thorne gal ir sugadino vardą Bella, bet Bella Rose išgelbėjo jį.
So let me ask you the first question. What do you think about the fact that it was leaked?
Well, I think that in itself is very scary because it's a privacy leak.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand how something like that could have happened.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It is pretty scary
Yeah.
and unprecedented. I mean,
Odd.
yeah. The court is sort of supposed to be immune from that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's your opinion on assuming that it's all correct, and it's been mostly confirmed, the overturning of Roe v. Wade?
To answer your question just very simply, I just don't understand the whole debate. Whereas, like women should just be able to govern their own bodies.
Okay. Well, that's a different conversation, right? It's like where life begins and if it's your body or not.
Right.
Before we get to that, we can talk about that if you'd like to.
Sorry.
But I'd like to sort of talk, because a lot of people don't really know what overturning Roe v. Wade means.
Yeah.
And that's by design from the media. They've obfuscated, made it complicated. What is your impression of what happens if Roe v. Wade is overturned?
It is complicated.
Well, from what I've understood, isn't it correct that the whole thing is about, like, the document was leaked and it had a decision regarding how women's bodies should be governed? Isn't that correct?
No, so basically just, Roe v. Wade, I don't know let's go back to kind of Roe v. Wade when it happened. Roe v. Wade, there's no constitutional right to an abortion.
Right.
It was
that's right.
It's sort of predicated under the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause, which they interpreted as a right to privacy, and so women with their doctor. And all Roe v. Wade really, what it did was it said that states could not place any restrictions on pregnancies or on abortions in the first trimester. all that happens is if it gets overturned, is that changes where it goes on a state-by-state basis. So California can make their own law, Texas can make their own law. So if you want to have abortion all the way up until third trimester, 8 months like some states, 9 months like some states, they can do it. And a place like Texas would legally be allowed to have like a heartbeat pill.
Right. Yeah, I think it is difficult to determine all of that, but at the same time, I mean, I just think that.
But going back to the states,
like I think it's odd if we're leaving the choice up to states to make that decision. If that makes sense. Like I feel like holistically, it should just be legal.
Okay. Well, what it's just saying is, it's not illegal federally.
Right.
And states can place restrictions if they want.
Right.
So, I mean, there are a lot of things, right, that we let states do, from property taxes, I mean, the way you do your education, for example, if you need, just public schools, some states have more agreements with charter schools, so this is just another example of it going to states' rights. Does that, I guess the question is, considering, there were protests here and across the country that have gotten violent and outside of the Supreme Court justices' houses, which I think we agree on, the leak is a bad thing, the doxing is a bad thing.
Yeah, it's really
Do
bad.
we really think that the end result of overturning it is that extreme that it warrants that kind of a reaction? Because it's not a ban on abortion.
Yeah.
Tokį efektą
It's
tik
not a
turės.
ban on abortion.
Ta patį čia šnekės jau jaučiu visą laidą.
I'm sorry if I sound redundant, but
I
I think the whole premise, I think the whole thing is just silly when we're like talking about what women can and can't do with their bodies and their choices.
Yeah. Well, then that gets to the idea. It's not really agreed upon.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if we want to get to that conversation, we can have that conversation. I'll tell you, I am pro-life.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I think that Roe v. Wade is bad law. And there are a lot of, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, it really wasn't a good ruling because there's no constitutional right to an abortion. She said she thought that at some point it would probably be undone. So that's a separate issue, people protesting sort of the changing of the law. On the issue of what women do with their own bodies, and this is why it goes to states, can you at least understand, because I can understand why you would say that. I can understand the argument. Can you understand why someone else, and particularly states and their legislatures, might say, okay, but when there's another heartbeat, it's not your own body. When there's another pair of eyes, fingers, toes, it's not your own body, and they have the right, as they do in other state issues, to determine what limitations there are. Can you understand why people think it's very different from any other issue and that they don't believe it's your body when there's another body?
I understand that perspective because
Šitą klasę turėjo 2 prikelimus, tai dar prisikėliau 2 kartus jau po mirties. Anyway.
at that point when you start to have a heartbeat at a certain period of time, it does become another person involved.
Okay.
Because developmentally, right? But I think I do agree with the fact that there should be at least some kind of cutoff point. But the whole thing with like,
when do you think that cutoff should be?
I mean, I feel like if there isn't a cutoff, then at that point it's just kind of like, well, you had a long time to decide whether or not this was going to be the choice for you.
Right.
So I can't give you an exact number, but I feel like at least before the fetus is fully, or at least partially fully formed, I feel like that would be a reasonable.
That'd be reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is what most states will be doing.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, and this is just, hey, Lane, can I grab this from you? Just, because this is also, I think this might help with Americans, because a lot of people, so let me kind of give you an example, right? In Colorado, for example, and in Virginia, they can do abortions all the way up to here.
Yeah.
Texas says not after here, right? A heartbeat bill, about this area. Where do you think the cutoff should be?
Well,
and this shows you kind of where things have developed and what has developed.
I mean, it is a good question, but it's hard to say. I mean, it definitely shouldn't be anywhere over here.
Okay.
Užkeistas ginklas.
I mean, I would say at least like over here, probably.
Okay.
I would imagine.
So that still includes the first trimester.
Yeah.
Which Roe v. Wade said you couldn't place restrictions right there at week 11 and 12.
Yeah.
And that's what was sort of brought. That's what was brought to the Supreme Court, because there were regulations that were created in this range, and it was technically illegal for the states to do that.
Well, it's hard to say it. It's an odd perspective, but I just think that women should just be able to decide for themselves.
But should they be able to decide for themselves here? And this is the thing, because that's a question, is Roe v. Wade, I think, is bad law. But if someone is going to say it's good law, then it is incumbent upon them to say when is okay and when's not. And it seems like you believe there should be some limitations.
Well, think about it this way. Think about women who do make the choice to have an abortion. They're already, depending on their perspective, but they're already going to be dealing with psychological repercussions.
From the abortion?
Yeah, I mean, that's very common.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma.
I feel like regardless at what state of development the baby is in, I mean, it's a choice that they have to make.
So even at these weeks?
Yeah.
So you support laws that allow abortion up until all the way 9 months?
I would say. Yeah.
I'm just a little confused because you said depending on where they are developmentally,
well,
like those babies they can be born, right? There are plenty of babies. I mean, my twins were born before this.
I know. I probably contradicted myself, but.
And this isn't. That's why I show it. It's the opposite of a gotcha. I'm trying to understand your perspective, because I will say, to me, the only way to consistently draw the line is at fertilization. Once there's new DNA.
Right.
That's separate from the mother and the father. Right? It's a new genetic code that determines everything from, hand size, eye color, male pattern baldness, versus something arbitrary.
Right.
Because I think then you get into the territory of up until 9 months, and I mean, we're no longer in the discussion of viability, right? If you support that, then that just means it doesn't matter if the baby is viable or not.
I have to run toward, because this is the end of my lunch break.
All right.
But I will just leave you with the fact that I think this is definitely an interesting discussion, and I think it's really good to explore it. And I do see your side. I see your viewpoint.
Thank you.
And I think I would have to take a little bit more time myself to really think about exactly.
I think that's very reasonable.
Everything.
I think we all should.
Yeah.
As opposed to just yelling at each other.
You bring up good points, but at the same time, I mean, there's just a lot of variables.
I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that a lot of people feel that way. Would we, before you leave, would we at least agree that the overturning of Roe v. Wade has been a little misrepresented, in that most people think it's a ban on abortion,
well,
and that's not what
I think there is the possibility it could be clouded.
Tas tikrai teisingai, iš abiejų pusių labai daug misreprezentacijos visiems dalykam būna. Lygiai taip pat kaip Crowderis dabar misreprezentina labai daug dalykų, netgi šitam pokalbį, kuriuos ir pavardinau.
I mean, also when you're dealing with mass social
Tai su
media,
tuo galima
it's very easy for...
Bet problema ta, kad Crowderiui netrodo, kai jis misreprezentina kažką. Jam atrodo, kad tik medija, ta liberali medija misreprezentina šitą. Jam atrodo, kad jis čia nieko blogo nedaro, ir tame problema.
Things to be misinterpreted.
Or even mainstream media like ABC and CNN.
And then you're going to get into the whole Snowden thing. Like, everything's like everything's...
Nothing is real.
Yeah, or like Big Brother's watching 1984.
Well, Big Brother's definitely watching.
Exactly.
I think we both agree that Big Brother is definitely watching at this point.
I mean, at this point, I could have somebody...
A Department of Misinformation in the federal government.
Like, in my phone. Like, somebody could be watching me right now.
Do you know how you fix that? Sticky notes. I'm high tech with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes.
Be well.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. Doing fine, thanks. Do any of you have 2 minutes? I know you got the Jimmy John, so you did it crazy fast.
I said it was crowded.
Well, I was going to ask you guys about the Roe v. Wade situation going on. What about you? You have 3 minutes? It's more important to get a female's perspective. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah, screw me, right?
What's your opinion on the potential overturning of Roe v. Wade?
This isn't going to be... Is this recording right now?
It could, yeah, it's recording. But we're trying to get opinions from people. That's all. Just what your opinion is on the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Okay, so you support the Roe v. Wade as it was before?
Oh, yes, yes.
You know, that was created as a law by 5 white guys.
Yes, oh, I know.
So I'm just saying they decided what women could do with their bodies.
Yeah.
But, so, either way, that's kind of how it's going, right?
I'm like sweating right now. I really can't be on camera. I feel like this might be like a violation of like me speaking.
They don't let you speak? You're not allowed to speak your mind? It's not white men who run that company, is it? They shouldn't be able to tell you what you do with your mouth.
It is.
Do you want to go talk to them? Do you want to go with you in the office?
No,
I'll go to the office. I'll talk to those white guys. They can't tell you what you can and can't do with your body.
I gotta go though. I got a meeting to get to.
Okay, all right. Go have your meeting.
Can you just like not air this? I don't know.
Let's just make sure there are no white guys in that meeting.
Well, yeah, I just.
Are there white guys in that meeting? You shouldn't be meeting with them. You should be telling them to meet with you.
The fuck, kam includino šitą iš viso?
It's a black woman.
Okay, I guess.
Because don't let them be like, hey, you got to be here at 11:15.
Yeah,
Because that's them telling you.
Nedarušalos.
My point is, do your own, you do
Research. Do your own research.
Hey, what's his name?
Gordo.
Gordo? Mary. Gordo, like Mortal Kombat?
Yeah.
Awesome. Is that why you were named Gordo?
No, it's named after a Canadian singer. And
like Gordon Lightfoot?
Gord Downey. Gord Downey.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm Canadian. So are you Canadian?
No, I'm Texan.
All right.
Born and raised.
Okay. Now they're appropriating Canadian culture. So, Gordo and Mary, thanks for taking the time. They're just had a great conversation with those folks. So friendly. Yeah. Have you been following kind of the Roe v. Wade overturning?
Yeah, very closely.
Yeah. Okay.
Very closely.
I think it's pretty fucked up what's going on.
Okay.
I think everybody should have the right to choose, well, particularly women. I think when it's something that's affecting your body, you should have the right to choose how you should have the right to choose how you go about your own health. And I think taking that away from people, and not even just taking away, but criminalizing it is a very backward step for a country.
Gerai, kai tas švakas tą pasako, tai dabar tai tu būtum tada ir prieš mandate vakcinų, bet jeigu paklausiu jo, jis turbūt sakytų, kad ne, aš už mandate buvau, tipo, už tas, reikia skiepytis, bet ten jau nepriklauso, ar, pats atsakingas už savo health ar ne. Čia tas argumentas, kurie visą laiką susimaunant jo. Nes abiejose tai liečia ir kito žmogaus sveikatą, gyvybę, tada dar negimusio vaiko, tipo, okay.
That prides itself on freedom.
Criminalizing abortion.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think, right? What's your opinion?
I think it's terrible. It's awful.
Same reasoning?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Is it your impression that Roe v. Wade overturning... Well, let me ask you this first. What do you think about the leak? The fact that this was leaked from the Supreme Court?
I think it's pretty crazy to have like a leak of that magnitude. But I think it's also very important that that we have this knowledge so you can at least like talk about it before this all happens. We have a very hard right-leaning Supreme Court right now, which we've had, of course, this is America, we've had whether Democrat or Republican, in the very large gist of the political scale, we were right-leaning throughout our history. But right now it's to an extent that we really haven't seen in a very, very long time, really, since the Civil War. So I think it's when you start taking away rights that have been affirmed over and over and over on this magnitude, I think it's important to...
I'm sorry, I'm confused. But you sound like you're pretty right-wing because you talked about freedoms and personal liberties. That's
no, I think freedom and personal liberties, right-wing or left-wing, there's always bipartisan issues, and no matter who you are, you're a fucking communist. You're communist because you think freedom is of this way, and I'm not a communist, but and you're hard right wing, it's because you want freedoms in this way. Everybody has their own ideas of how to get there.
No, communism is not about freedom. It's pretty clearly expressive. It's anti-freedom. Like there's no one who argues that communism is freedom.
There's communists that argue that.
And not Marx or Lenin.
Smart
about the freedom that comes with communism.
Tai aišku, yra žmonių, kurie arguments, kad komunizmas yra laisvė.
The individual, which if you're into individualism, I'd assume.
Can I ask you, is it freedom if you're taking my rights away?
So, well, this is interesting.
The right to my own body.
Sorry. This is interesting. I think there's kind of two different questions. Is the idea, and if we want to talk about sort of abortion, we can. I sort of want to discuss the impression of the law. So you mentioned like federally, criminalizing abortion. Are you under the impression that that's what the overturning of Roe v. Wade is?
No, the overturning of Roe v. Wade is giving states the right to criminalize abortion. Yeah. Which, okay.
States to set their own rules.
But if you go deeper into it...
More specifically, like in the second and first trimester.
If you get into this, there is a big discrepancy, particularly in the U.S., between income levels. And if you, particularly in a state like Texas, which is fucking huge, as you know, if you don't make enough, like it costs to get to another state to have an abortion, just to travel out, it's going to be like gas prices are incredibly high, all this. Just to get to another,
are they over
like
4?
four or something? Yeah.
It's not that bad.
That's pretty. He just said it was bad. Seems like you're couching it a little bit.
Anyways. But
yeah, like California.
If you don't have the money, which there are quite a lot of low-income people, not just in Texas, but in the U.S. in general, to get out, to access your right to an abortion, which isn't even your right unless you're in another state, you can only do that if you have money. So unless there's, I'm against criminalizing abortion completely, but if you want to go like that and you still care about personal freedoms and rights, there should be like very hardcore programs to allow the people that do want it to go to another state. And how it's set up right now, it's leading the way to make it not just illegal to have an abortion within Texas or whatever state that criminalizes it, but to make it criminal to go to another state to get an abortion. And I think that's like it's pretty totalitarian and authoritarian.
So where would it make it? Your impression is that it would make it criminal to go to another state to get an abortion?
No, but that's what it's leading up to, because these are precedents we're talking about.
Huh.
This is how the Supreme Court
I haven't heard that suggested that any kind of.
I shouldn't could do.
This is how precedents work in legal scenarios. You're setting a very large precedent like this, which gives people the right to go further and further and further. The whole Roe v. Wade precedent is based on that it's not allowed. This abortion wasn't mentioned in the Constitution, but also the right to marry interracially isn't in the Constitution. The right to like.
Nes yra implied rights. Aš šįvakar bent daugiau pasidomėjęs.
A lot of things that we take as very granted and that are important aren't mentioned in the Constitution. So I think
Taip, nes yra implied rights.
Dangerous thing that's happening right now.
Ir tą pripažino.
And your question was, now I understand where you're coming from. I would disagree with. First off, do you mean precedent or precedents? You used both.
Precedent.
Okay, precedent. Yeah. And you asked me a question earlier.
I asked you a question?
Yeah, you asked me a question. I wanted to get to the Supreme Court kind of Roe v. Wade.
Man atrodo, Karalius nežino, kaip šitą dialogą pakreipti į tą pusę, kuris patogiai jaustus.
Have that right, because you actually understand what Roe v. Wade being overturned is. A lot of people think that there's a federal criminalizing of abortion, which is.
Jis čia nieko nesakė, nieko.
Allows it to the states. Yeah, I don't.
Biškai jį challenge'ino šitas šiuvas. Ir Karalius visiškai nežino, ką sakyti ir kaip pakreipti temą, kad šnekėtų apie tai, ką jis išmano. Tai dabar praignoravo kaip ir viską, kad aš šįvakar sakė, nu tai bent jau žinai, apie ką tas yra. Ir dabar vėl iš karto grąžino prie to, kad čia state'ams, palikti sprendimus. Grinai, amazing.
Really, I haven't seen any literature that suggests
over half the states already have a...
And I think it's also very difficult when it leads it to the states, because the gerrymandering is so intense in places like Texas and stuff, which really skews the political outlook when the large majority of people in cities like this, like Dallas, do vote blue, and I'm not a Democrat. In fact, I'm very heavily against the Democratic Party, just about as equally as much as I'm against the Republican Party. I think the U.S. politics are fucked across the board.
Based.
So how would you identify?
I am progressive, left-leaning. I believe
as a man,
rights, which I mean, I think we all deserve a right to. We're the richest country in the world, and it's 2022. We're very progressive. We have the right to health care. We have the right to bodily autonomy and to be an individual person, to chase your self-actualization, be the person you want to be, as long as you're not harming anybody else. I know this is where it comes down to, because in abortion, in this rhetoric, it always comes down to whether you believe a fetus is a person or not. And I believe, because I don't remember, and nobody remembers what they were as a fetus because you're not sentient, I don't believe you're a person until you're born, until you're a sentient being.
I don't remember anything before my second birthday.
Yeah, me neither, which is what well, I'm also not advocating for aborting someone at a year old, but
no, I know, but I was saying the line of sentience, right?
The right to your own body.
But you're not even, you're not in the world at all.
Why are you forcing women to carry out a pregnancy that they can't afford, that, that would lead up to a lot of high rates of infant mortality, people can't take care of a child, people can't go to the doctor,
Prisiminkit, pro-liferims life rūpi tik kol gimsta vaikas. Čia tas senas geras prikolas. Jau kai gimsta vaikas, tai you're on your own. Welfare negausi, nieko negausi, paid maternity leave negausi, nieko negausi. Bet jiem rūpi gyvybė, iki kol gimsta.
It's a problem. The healthcare system is awful. You can't afford to have a child in this country. It's expensive.
Right.
I'm 21. I could never afford to have a child. I can afford my health insurance, that is expensive, but once a year.
Oh, what the fuck is that? Revives once with 50p.
Go to the doctor, but that's about it. I can't afford to go to a hospital and have a child.
We can't even afford to go to the hospital in general.
I can't afford housing in this state, in this country. I can't.
Yeah, I can't even afford to go to the doctor in general. If I get actually sick, like I'm people that make $100,000 a year, you get cancer, you're bankrupt.
Where do you work?
Right now, I just got back from Europe, doing a study abroad. So this is my first day back, so I don't have a job right now. I study human rights, actually.
Okay, cool.
I study human rights and international studies.
Where were you studying that?
Barcelona.
Like a university?
Yeah,
Cool.
IAU is the university. It's my final semester, so I was just finishing. I've already finished my degree. I was just doing like my electives basically, and traveling. But yeah, I study human rights at SMU, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you said you can't afford a house.
Oh,
no, who can afford a house at, like, I'm 23, who can afford a house at 23?
No one ever.
Or you said you can't afford a place to live.
So where do you... Well, I could afford a place to live if I was willing. Compared to 5 years ago, it was very easy for me. For 5 years ago, I could go bartend, like, which is what I normally do, and I can afford a decent place for like $800, $700 a month. In Dallas, it's very hard to find. Like, to get a place that's not cockroach infested and like falling down, I'd have to have like 2 or 3 roommates, which is normal. But I mean, I've been here my entire life, and it's just getting. I've seen the change firsthand. We bought our house for $80,000. That neighborhood's about $400,000 now because of these multi-corporations coming in and
like
buying up
Vanguard
all
and
neighborhoods.
BlackRock.
Yeah.
We'd probably agree. You know, Elizabeth Warren saying they should be too big to fail. But I don't think any company is too big to fail. They should fail.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but I understand where you're going with this situation, and I also believe that. I believe that when a corporation gets past a certain threshold of money, they should be checked and limited by the government, because I believe it was Thomas Jefferson has a quote where he talks about if the power is directed towards the banks. I wish you can look it up later if you want. You probably won't, because I know you like to nitpick your things. Nothing against you.
No,
but,
this will be totally unedited.
But you can.
I really appreciate everything you've been saying.
There's a
Crowderis smarkiai nitpikina dalykus. Čia on the head. Labai smarkiai. Netgi šitam video, kur jisai pasakė šitą, blet, kur nori, Planned Parenthood nori užmušti daugiau juodaodžių vaikų. ir palinkino kaip source opinion piece kažkokiam saitė. Neįsijungiu, reiktų įsijungti. Bet, tipo, jis labai nitpikina specifinius dalykus, nes jeigu jis turėtų geresnį tyrimą kažkokį, jis tą būtų ir palinkinęs, bet jis palinkino opinion piece, tai jis ieškojo kažkokio randomo tokio opinion piece, kad galėtų pasakyti eilutę, kad Planned Parenthood nori išmušti juodų vaikų daugiau. Nu, tipo, ir Crowderis tą daro jau N metų. Ta pastebi bet kas realiai, kas, objektyviai žiūri ir stebi, kai jis labai nitpikina dalykus. Bet aišku, didžioji dauguma panditų tą daro.
The thing about Thomas Jefferson that talks about when the money is goes, you can look up Thomas Jefferson bank quote, I believe, and when the banks, if they're given too much money, and by banks it's capital interest, goes above the people, it's no longer a democracy, and it's true. I certainly agree. We really pride ourselves on being a democracy, but we're not.
I think we can find common ground there, in the sense that
I can find common ground with a lot of right-wing people, but our ideals are against each other because there are certain things.
Can you let me speak? I think we're saying the same thing on Too Big to Fail. I think that big banks want to privatize profits and socialize losses, right? And I think you're saying pick a lane, so where we won't find common ground is more so socialize the banks.
Whereas what do you mean about socialized losses? Can you expand on that?
Well, they get bailed out by the taxpayer once they screw up their own banking practices, right? They're insured. In other words, when the bank has a problem, they're insured by the federal government. And so that's the taxpayer, and that's people who really shouldn't. Even people who are middle class, people who are lower middle class, paying taxes shouldn't bail out banks, right?
Even past that.
Do we agree on that?
I do agree on that.
There you go.
But even past that, what the hell do we get as taxpayers even without that? We're one of the richest nations in the world. We don't have our free healthcare. We don't have a public transport system that's adequate.
True.
We have a public transport system, but come on, it's bullshit.
Arlington, there is none.
Is there no public transit in Arlington?
For most of the U.S., there's compared to Europe, you don't need a car really. You can survive quite easily.
Tas čiuvakas visai gerai savo holdinu iš tikrųjų. Ir, pakeliavęs yra. Aš labai dažnai galvoju, kad žmonės, kurie gyvena savo vienoj šaly ir niekur nėra net nuvažiavę ever, jie bus buki žmonės, ne? Nes perspektyva yra labai svarbu. Ir labai daug tų problemų amerikiečiai, kur turi, atrodo, mes čia Europoje, net nemastom apie tokius dalykus, ne dėl to, kad nesam progresyvūs, mes tiesiog, apie tokį healthcare mes kaip ir išsprendė. Ir lygiai taip pat tada galvoju, gal ir man reiktų, nuvaryti Ameriką ir perspektyvos įgauti, kodėl yra dalykai taip, kaip yra, nes man, nėra suvokiama ten daug dalykų, kurie pas juos yra, pas mus, nėra arba, yra daug geriau atrodo padaryta. Bet jo, iš infrastruktūros pusės, kad pas jos tas public transportas, kiek pas jos mašinų yra ir visą tą tokią kultūrą, dar atrodo, vakar žiūrėjau, man atrodo, miestų planavimas, kiek ten mašinų ir mašinom aikštelių, tuo tarpu kaip Europoje šitas dalykas išspręstas. Bet šitas žmogus, studying abroad, biškai temą išmano, biškai daugiau ir perspektyvos turi, gali palyginti su Europą ir nebėra tas, kur kartos America #1, ne, seni.
Without one, for most of the U.S., if you don't have a car, you are struggling. You don't have a life. You don't have the ability to have a social life.
True.
It's difficult to get to work. The U.S. is quite big. We don't invest at all in. We don't invest in the social good, really, with any of our tax money. Our tax money is, it goes to...
I don't really know that I agree with that. I mean, you're talking about many, many trillions of dollars spent in the war on poverty, and we just talked about...
War on poverty.
Dallas right now, and you see the homeless people in every corner.
No, I agree. I just don't think that the federal spending on the war on poverty works. Just like the war on drugs hasn't worked.
Well, yeah,
I don't think throwing more money at it helps. I think that the problem is
so then what are you going for?
Well, I think the problem there, right, is we both agree that it's corruption. There's a lot of money that's being spent. It's not being spent in the right way. I don't necessarily think that all those things are fundamental human rights, but I certainly would argue that the money is being spent very poorly. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent. We have a spending problem, and it's not going anywhere useful. But I wanted to get back to kind of Roe v. Wade and the subject. Let me ask you this, because there are people, for example, we had four people there, African Americans, who had a problem.
How do you know they're poor just because they're African American?
I said four.
Oh, four. I think you said poor.
Ooh, careful with your presumptions.
No, I thought I misheard you. It wasn't a presumption. It sounded 4 and 4.
There were 4 African Americans there. The number 4.
I thought you said poor.
Okay, I didn't.
What were you asking?
Well, thanks.
Is their point of view was okay. They were pro-choice, and then she was a mother of 4. And when I asked her about the Texas heartbeat bill, she said, "Well, yeah, of course, after a heartbeat, because she had done an ultrasound, she said that's a life, that's a separate heart. Whose heart are you stopping?" My question to you is this, because I know you're coming in hot and
I'm not coming in hot. I'm really speaking like, I'm not coming in hot, I'm not being aggressive.
Can you understand the other
Crowderis daro tą patį, ką darė prieš tą Jusifą, kur kalbėjo, ar socialism is evil. Ir kai Jusifas jį pradėjo vartyti biškiuką, ir kai Crowderis nebežinojo, ką sakyti ir kaip, nes Jusifas biški mąstė, Crowderis pradėjo kabinėtis. Prie random dalyko prisikabino prie žodžio vieno ir tada gal 5 minutės piso protą. Tada toks pasyv-agresyvumas atsirado, pradėjo, ir jis lygiai tą patį čia daro. Žmogus misherdino por su for. Jau prie to iškart prisikabino biški nepaleidžia. Dabar pradeda pasakot, kai jūs čia atėjot agresyvus, hot atėjot. Jis visą laiką tą daro prieš bet kokį žmogų, kuris nors biški atsišaudo atgal. Holy fuck, it's fucking fascinating žiūrėti. O sakau, Crowderis šnekėt gali tik su visiškais idiotais. Su bet kokiu žmogu, kuris nors biški kažkokį mąstymą turi, viskas. Nežino, ką sakyti, nežino, ką daryti, nežino, kaip gražinti topiką, apie ką jisai, atėjo čia šnekėti, apie ką paskaitė prieš 10 minučių, kam pasirašė ir kai nežino, kaip gražinti tą pokalbį, kur nori, tada pradeda kabinėjimasis prie žodžio, dar kažkas, arba tiesiog atėjo čia agresyviai nusiteikę.
Where someone says, someone does certainly more than half the country believe in a limitation at some point, that at a certain point, it's no longer your own body. That's their argument, and that's why the Supreme Court has said it's bad law, and states should have the right to enforce those regulations. I'll let the woman speak.
Will the fetus survive?
Let the woman speak.
If it's outside of your body?
So you don't have any children, right?
No, I don't.
Because a baby won't survive outside of the body.
No, it's relying on your body.
Right. A baby won't survive outside of the body, but I mean a baby delivered naturally won't survive outside of the body.
But we're talking about fetus right now,
I'm talking about fetus.
So what changes from, let's say, 8 weeks and 6 days?
Ir mes grįžtam vėlgi prie temos. Kad, tai kurią savaitę grinai čia jau. Kodėl tu banini tuos, kuris šaudo atgal? O kuris yra... Kuris yra gavęs baną, kad atsišaudė atgal? Ar ką tu... Bent vieną žmogų pažįsti tokį? Ar įrodymą kažkokį turi tam? Aš neprisimenu, kad bent vienas žmogus yra gavęs, kuris atsišaudo atgal. Nes ateina ir karalius duchas, tai nėra atsišaudimas atgal. tai kuris žmogus yra gavęs baną už atsišaudimą atgal, man įdomu. Anyway.
Oh, sorry, 8 months, 3 weeks, 6
5,
days.
jo, kiek aš planuoju, 5 metus jau beveik striminu, nors vienas žmogus ar yra gavęs. Pavyzdžiui, šitas gaus baną, žiūrėk, už atsišaudimą atgal. Kai nuėmiau tą follower maudą, tai yra kartais tų, kur ateina reklamuoja, tai reikia jos prabaninti biškai. Anyway,
So 9 months. Is it just inside, outside the womb that makes it a person?
Well, one's a fetus and one's a baby.
But why is one a fetus if it's if it's just one day shy of 9 months?
It's not relying on your body to your umbilical cord, and once it's outside and cut, that's a baby.
So is that what defines a person as the umbilical cord?
My opinion, yeah.
So what if a woman gives birth and they haven't cut the cord yet? Does that mean they can abort the baby at that point?
But nobody's even talking about aborting like a baby that's still on the cord.
It actually does exist. It actually does exist. There was a bill.
But we have like so many billions of people in the world.
But it was a bill presented that. And I feel like I've been pretty respectful in letting you talk a lot and go into different directions.
Well, you're interviewing me, so of course I would talk a lot. So yeah, I'm also being respectful.
Well, I think interrupting is different from talking a lot. Would we agree?
Oh my God, Crowder.
If you want me to leave, it's okay.
Well, I would like to hear her answer.
I'm having a conversation.
Okay, so the umbilical.
Gerai, nenoriu šnekėti su čivaku, kuris studijavo užsienį, kažką išmano tą temą, gali daug temų šnekėti, aš geriau dabar pakeisiu temą ir šnekėsiu, tai kurioj čia vietoje yra jau gyvybė, kurioj dar negyvybė su ta moterim, kuri nestudijavo užsienį, su kuria biškai lengviau šnekėti. Va, Crowderis. Jeez.
Is that what defines personhood? I mean, the point that other people are defining person, and people define it differently. Yeah. I understand that. Mm-hmm. For example, these 4 African Americans said, okay, heartbeat, they agree with the Texas bill. Some people think that it's after the first trimester. But at a certain, where would you define when it's a person?
Why is it called the heartbeat bill?
Because it's when you can detect a fetal heartbeat.
Can you detect a fetal heartbeat at 6 weeks?
Yes.
Not sure about that.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so what is your argument?
You used to be able to, but you can now.
Okay, man dabar įdomu, pala. When can you detect heartbeat? Fetal heartbeat may first be detected by a vaginal ultrasound as early as 5.5 to 6 weeks after gestation. Jo, todėl Crowderis ten ir nuėjo, nes jisai žino, nes žmonės labai dažnai naudoja šitą heartbeat kaip, kaip liniją, kurią brėžia, kada jų gyvybė, kada ne. Ir tai yra daug anksčiau negu 12 savaitė. Bet problema ta, ar heartbeat turėtų kažką reikšti? Iš tikro, aš dabar galvoju, daugumai tai nieko nereiškia, nes tas heartbeat, tai biologinis procesas, todėl turbūt žmonės, tos įstatymus ir priėmė ties 12 savaitę, kai ten kažkaip atrodo jau taip priėmė, kad kai pirmas mintis jau geba turėti tas, tas fetus kūdikis, I guess. Kai pirmas mintis kažkaip independent gali turėti, kažkaip pagal jie tai nulėmė, bet jo, Crowderis tą diskusiją jau pakreipė vėl, net ne apie Roe versus Wade, jis vėl kalba, kur ta linija brėžiama turi būti ir žmonės prigūdinėja, tai heartbeat, bet tu žinai, kad heartbeat yra anksčiau. Ir jokios produktyvios diskusijos niekad nebus, net pagal klausimą apie Roe versus Wade, apie ką ir pavadintas video, nes jau 5, 4, kalbinamas žmogus yra nukreipiamas prie tos temos, kur yra ta linija brėžiama. God damn.
With more advanced ultrasound, and I just had twins, so yeah, I know it for a fact.
What is your argument?
No, my question is, can you understand, in other words, those people who were horrified right at the idea of aborting a baby after a heartbeat, then there are a lot of Americans who believe that, okay, once it has its own fingers, toes,
koks tavo argumentas?
Who believe, like I do.
I believe in the woman's choice. I believe in the right to choose.
So when does that line, I guess, when is there the line of, and this is why it's going to states?
I mean, I've talked to many people that are pro-choice about this. I believe the woman has the right to abort a child whenever they want.
So all the way up until 9 months, including birth?
Yeah.
And you don't believe that baby is a person at 8 months, 7, even though they could be born and viable? Because you said viability earlier. They are viable. It's viable at 21 weeks.
If it's a person, if it's still in your body, you have the choice to do what you want with your body.
So is the location what determines a person, in your body or outside of your body?
once it's delivered, you...
Ben Shapiro argumentas. Kaip ten vagina, kai išeina jau žmogus, kai neišeina ne žmogus, tipo, čia jo argumentas.
Okay, first of all, nobody really wants to abort a child at 8 months.
Yeah, it does. It happens all the time.
Not all the time. It doesn't happen all the time, Sani.
There's always like when they find out.
Few months,
But my
happens
problem
tens of
also,
thousands a year.
my problem also with this abortion bill is that it's making it so
Why
by the
did they
time
want to abort the child at 8 months
when
old?
it's
Well, now we're shifting the goalposts, right? I'm just saying it does happen, and
Yeah.
there are states that
And I
restrict
wanna
it, but there are
know-
some states that don't. My question is, would you restrict it then if you're saying,
No.
okay, so someone should be able to abort at 8 months, 9 months?
If that's what they choose.
Okay, why?
Why? Because it's their body, so it's their choice.
So
It's a person who is able to have a child, so it's
Čia tokia
their choice.
neproduktyvi diskusija tarp jų,
if
kad...
a woman is 8 months pregnant, using your premise, since we've gone to this, does that woman have 20 fingers? Does she have 20 toes? Does she have a penis if it's a boy?
What does
she
that
have 2
matter?
brains?
What does that matter?
Well, because you're ending the life, the functioning life of another human being that has all of those things. So I'm saying, you're saying that's her body, so that woman has 20 toes?
What does that matter?
It's not her body if she doesn't have 20 fingers and toes.
Oh, you're saying 10 fingers plus her 10 fingers, that's
Yeah.
20 fingers.
So is it still the woman's body?
It's her child, it's her body,
Well, is
so
it her
it's
child or is it her
choice.
body?
Both. It's...
Well,
What
it's
is that?
one or the other.
No,
Her
it's
child is
not.
her
O,
body.
gerai,
Her body has to be separate.
gerai, netgi tas argumentas, kodėl jis one or the other, nes tu taip nusprendi, jai taip neatrodo. Jai atrodo, kad tai vienas ir tas pats. Ir, Jesus, čia tokia tūpa diskusija ir Crowderis toks lopas čia pasirodė prieš juos kalbant. Nu, tipo, nei tu gali mintį normaliai vystyti, tada, nu, iki galo, aš nežinau net. Atrodo, kad Crowderis šitoj diskusijoje pasimetė. Ta čiuvaką visiškai pradėjo ignoruoti, nes tas čiuvakas daugiau net greičiausiai čia žinojo, aš nežinau. Bet dabar tą panašneka ir aš nežinau, nu, aš nepritarčiau irgi, man atrodo, kad 9 mėnesių daryti abortą atrodo incredibly dumb, nu, tipo, jau grinai visiškai pilnai išsivystęs vaikas. Bet galima suprasti, ką jinai sako. Jai atrodo, kad iki pat pagimdymo yra moters kūne, reiškia, moteris turi turėti, kaip čia, agency. Ir tai jos pozicija. Crowderis, aš nežinau, bando nesuprasti to. Jis turi suprasti.
When it's a child, probably the person that's carrying, whether you would call it a child or a fetus. I know this is what it comes down to. Is it a child or a fetus? In my opinion, when it's in your body, the medical idea of what you call it a fetus is a fetus. If you aborted me when I was a fetus, I'm not gonna complain because I don't know. Because I'm not sentient. I'm not a person. You're a
Well, there are plenty of
matter
people
of
who
cells.
aren't sentient, people with brain damage, babies who aren't
Yeah, I'm
sentient.
not talking about
Republikonai,
like
Stevenas
cleansing or
Crowderis,
anything like
kap,
that. I'm talking
leftistai.
And I'm just saying that's an important distinction.
No
to
brain
make, 'cause
activity
I understand
whatsoever.
it. Why is it not? Because you said child or her body. There's a big difference. Is it a child? I'm trying to understand where you're coming
You're
from.
not
I
in this
understand where they
world
came
yet.
from.
I don't think you're actually trying to understand where I'm coming
Exactly.
I asked you, could you understand where they're coming from? Because I was 4 people. Can you understand where they say, well, it's a separate heartbeat, so I understand some kind of
from. Yeah,
restriction?
but I also think
Yeah, and she
maybe
doesn't
they
agree.
just aren't fully knowledgeable on the entirety of the Texas bill that was passed for 6 weeks.
The 4 black people.
Yeah. Maybe,
A lot
I
of
don't know,
people.
I don't know.
What?
That might
Kodėl
be-
Crowderis tu tap?
A lot of Americans who think there should be a limitation. You understand that your view is considered, there's extreme left, extreme right is no abortions, even in the case of rape and incest. Yours is abortion up until 9 months. That's considered a pretty radical view, and so I'm curious to understand where you draw, and it seems to me like well, statistically it's a radical view.
Tau pasakė priežastį, kodėl taip mąsto, bet tu to nepriemi ir tikrai tu mėgini suprasti.
What makes it acceptable, and this is a question that I am trying to understand, what makes it acceptable when it's a baby that is totally viable, because that's what you brought up first, is completely viable outside of the womb. There's no debate at this point, right?
It's still connected to her body.
So it's the umbilical cord.
Can I bring something up?
Sure.
That the fetus is still relying on the nutrients of her body to survive.
Right.
So it's her choice to end that pregnancy.
So it is exclusively that a baby is relying on the
Biški kvaila pozicija, bet jos pozicija ir dar Crowderis nesupranta.
Well, once the baby is born and once it's not connected to that person, then
the baby's reliant on the mother's nutrients at that point, right? Mother's milk.
No, not necessarily, no.
Because of modern technology, but for a longest time, they had to be breastfed. They're still reliant upon the mother's nutrients.
Can I bring something up real quick?
Well, not the mother that, you don't necessarily have to be the mother that birthed the child to
Čivakas nori pasakyti kažką, tiesiog Karalius visiškai ignoruoja jį. Fucking yikes.
You said it's reliant upon the actual nutrients of another body.
What's the difference between the now child breastfeeding versus the child who is relying on the nutrients inside the body, is what you're saying. Yeah. Well, it's the person that had the child inside their body is. Where am I going?
We've been drinking, but can I bring something up?
We've been drinking.
Drugs earlier, and how it was ineffective because we poured all this money into it, and we really heavily criminalized like drugs and to like an extreme extent, and it never worked. It's actually made the problem worse. If you read any white papers, like any research paper on abortion and like limiting abortions, no matter what your ideal of like how conception or when it becomes a baby, abortions, like throughout anywhere that abortions have been criminalized, they still happen. But when you criminalize them, then you have the problems that we're facing right now. In the drug world, it's fentanyl, and I've lost 3 friends in 2 years from fentanyl. But in abortions, it's going to be illegal abortions because people are still going to be desperate and still going to have them, and people are still going to die and be like harmed.
Now I'm 21.
There won't be illegal.
Right now I'm 21. I can't afford to have a child, but if I were pregnant, I couldn't afford to have a child. I would get an abortion, a safe, legal abortion. It would allow me to have a child in the future because I didn't have to harm my own body to abort this child.
Right.
So if a safe, easy abortion, legal, would ensure that I was able to have a child in the future. So why I don't
understand the question. Are you asking me a question?
No, I'm just making a point.
Okay, because I was just waiting for the answer on the question regarding breastfeeding and bill abortion. I understand you were talking about fentanyl. If we don't have abortions, we'll have more fentanyl.
If you're taking away safe legal abortions, then if someone has no choice and can't afford a child and still...
They have a lot of, let's be honest about this, it's just, I think, they have a lot of choices.
You didn't let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
So if it was not legal to have an abortion and a person is still able to go out and have what we call a back alley abortion, could ruin their body for the rest of their life. They're not going to be able to have a child.
Čia tas argumentas, tik labai ilgai, tas Čivakas tą argumentą padarė, jo, jeigu draudi dalykus, atsiranda, jis už tą pusės, kad šis draus dalykų nereikia. Tai ir narkotikų legalizavimas būtų, ir ten alkoholikai uždraudė, ten mafijos atsirado, ta prohibicija, nieko gero nebuvo. Over and over again įrodo, kad jeigu kažką draudė, tiesiog yra blogiau, tai geriau legalizuoti, apmokestinti, bent jau kokybės kontrolė atsiranda. Ir jie čia kalba apie tą kokybės kontrolę, kad abortus vis tiek darysis, tik dabar jeigu uždraus tipo, tik nelegaliai bus. Aišku, Crowderis ne apie tai nori kalbėti, nes jis sako, kad neuždraus abortų, kad Roe vs. Wade kancelimas nėra apie uždraudimą abortų, jis apie tai norėtų šnekėti, bet tai tokį efektą turės, nes jeigu palieki steitam nuspręsti, ar uždraus ar ne, ir ten 10-15 steitų iš karto uždraudžia, tampa nelegalus abortas, tai tu efektyviai uždraudai. Tai rezultate tas bus, bet ne.
Child in the future, because it fucked up their uterus. It's... So a safe legal abortion would ensure that child, or that person, could have a child in the future.
Not necessarily.
Why?
The correlation equaling causation that a safe legal abortion, and there's of course the argument to be made that it's never safe for the baby involved, but there are other choices. It wouldn't ensure anything, because what does ensure it is contraception, abstinence, motherhood, adoption.
Abstinence doesn't work. Everybody knows that.
I gave you 3 other options.
And also, can I tell you, adoption.
I don't know about you, but there's never been a single baby from people who haven't been having sex.
Yeah, but we're all human and everybody has sex. And you try to teach kids about abstinence like they taught us in Texas, and it doesn't work. And a lot of people get pregnant when they're young because they don't know anything about
it.
They get pregnant if they...
Ir problema ta, tu sakai kontraceptinė, bet tada tie patys Teksasas, ar kaip ten nori padaryti, kad kontraceptinės būtų sunkiau įsigyti, reiktų receptą. Tai ar tu pats suprant, ką sakai, net nežinau. Jo, kontraceptika veiktų ir tipo veikia, bet aišku ne 100%, bet tie patys republikonai tam pačiam Teksase patys prieš tai kalbėjot, kad nori padaryti, kad kaip sako paskui jais after contraceptives, tai nori padaryti, kad dabar galėtų, ar jau padarė, kad, net nežinau, ar Teksase bendrai, bet tipo, kad reiktų receptų būtinai, kas limituoja accessą tai pačiai kontraceptikai. Tai what the fuck, Crowderį?
They're not practicing abstinence. Yes, I agree with you.
But who practices abstinence? Are you going to be a monk? Do you practice abstinence?
I've written about it extensively, yeah, before I was married.
Practice it?
Yeah, before I was married, yeah.
Yeah,
to each their own. But
well, you just made an argument that said to each their own. Yeah. I said three options. There's abstinence, contraception.
Most people don't do
a teenager in high school, if you tell them to never have sex, well, of course they're going to have sex.
And a lot of people don't have
abstinence, contraception.
And you never teach the person or the child in high school how to have safe sex.
Right.
That's the whole point of abstinence,
I'm not advocating that. I think I was pretty clear because I brought up the other choices.
We're about to go somewhere, but
right?
Where else?
I don't really give a shit. Yeah. I don't know what your point is.
Well, you said
can we wrap
that choice of safe, legal, and rare abortion.
No, we're just spiraling out of control.
Well, you said the choice of safe, legal, and rare abortion would ensure, and I was saying there are other options that ensure
wrap it up real quick?
Abstinence, contraception. No, hold on a second. Let me finish. Abstinence, contraception, motherhood, adoption. Abortion's not required to ensure it. Do you understand? Because you use the word required to ensure.
I'm sure you're aware that there are states that are making contraceptives illegal.
No, I'm not.
You're not aware of that?
There's been multiple
talks. There are no states right now that make contraception illegal.
Right now.
You know they're trying to.
No, right now. Tam reikia pirmą Roe versus Wade turbūt cancelint.
That's literally what I just said. There are states that are trying to make
Mississippi right now is talked about how they're making contraceptives legal is not off the board, which is a pretty intense thing to say.
Jo, Mississippi jo pasakė. Aš tą girdėjau, kad tipo 100% tipo sako, kad jeigu Roe versus Wade cancelintas bus, sekantis žingsnis bus same-sex marriage irgi staituose ten ar panašiai ir tada kontraceptikai irgi. Tai Crowderį apie ką tu kalbi?
The state legislature in Mississippi has not said that.
What about Louisiana and the IUD?
About the IUD, are you talking about right
go? So can we bring it back and wrap it up on whatever?
Yeah, no, I thought we just did bring it back. You brought it back to the war on drugs, that you were studying human rights abroad and can't afford a house, and that's a human right on the internet. And I think we've gone to a lot of different directions. Where I wanted to just have a conversation about Roe v. Wade, and I appreciate you going these different directions.
Nicotine? You can smoke if you want.
It's okay. I don't need anything. I appreciate it though. Thanks for offering. But I think I understand where you guys line up on Roe v. Wade, and I think that there's a divide in this country, and you know, states are going to be able to establish their own laws.
My point is I mean, you're not able to carry a child because I'm assuming that you are a man without a uterus.
Why?
And
oh, come on, Crowder.
Because you're Steven Crowder and you're
because you're fucking Steven Crowder, and I know you have a penis.
How do you know I have a penis?
Oh well, I don't. Never mind. It doesn't really.
No.
You can show us real quick if you want to prove it.
No, that's a felony.
We're okay with it. We're consenting. So
it doesn't matter. The other people here aren't consenting.
I'll show you mine if you consent.
That's the last thing I want to see.
So maybe.
Yeah, maybe it's because he lays it on the microwave. So
no, maybe because he
I'm a man. I'll go with it. I'm a man, and let me guess. You're about to say because I'm a man, I shouldn't have an opinion on abortion, right?
Well,
do you have an opinion on murder, theft, arson? Come on. It's a silly argument. But
you can have an opinion. We're all entitled to our opinion.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You guys have a good day. Be safe.
You too.
Well, there you have it. We managed to speak to the view of the majority of Americans on, okay, abortion with some limitations, the radical 30% who don't believe in any at all. And this guy asked us for $5.
I'll get like $5 for something.
And then he went and bought weed. So, I guess subscribe. What does weed go for? All right, I'm going to level with you. If you liked this...
Okay. Ko kitko aš tikėjausi iš Crowder video? Bent jau entertaining būna ir pasinervuoju išklausydamas to pridurko, bet dieve mano. Čia grinai buvo Jusef, ta pati istorija. O Jusef, tai aš nežinau, ar esat girdėję, Crowderis Change My Mind laida buvo apie Socialism is Evil, Change My Mind, kažkas tokio atrodo buvo tema. Ten vienas šivakas atėjo, nu jis legit, dar iki dabar komentaruose ten visi sako, kad Crowderis ten smarkiai buvo užvartytas. Tai bet jo, labai panašiai sergasi, kai biškai pradeda vartyti ar challenge'ina, ar bent jau pakreipia pokalbį tą pusę, kur Crowderis nėra pasiruošęs straipsniukų ar minčių prieš tai, kaip užvartys žmogų, kuris nieko nenusimano. Ir jis net sunkiai sekasi jam dialogą pakreipti, tai į tą pusę. Uf. Damn.